All right, everybody, how we doing? Y'all doing okay? Yeah? What's going on, everybody? All right, we got some stuff to talk about. Such as the entire Egghead arc ending. Okay, wait. Something's gonna happen here. Let me tell you guys something. All right. So, biggest thing is, I know what happens in the chapter. I read the spoilers yesterday. I had to write my video for next week, so I read the spoilers yesterday. I know what happens in the chapter. I have not physically read the chapter. As physically, who reads it physically? I have not actually read the full images of the chapter. So, there's two options. Either we do this stream with me talking based on the spoilers that I've read, or we do a live chapter reaction. How about we do a live chapter reaction? I think that would make a lot more sense. How about we do that? I'll do a live chapter reaction. We'll start with that, and then we'll get into discussions. Akash Panda says W poster. Yeah. Let's get the stream likes up to 100, says Merleon Wilco. I wholeheartedly agree. First, let me catch the supers that I missed from the beginning of the stream. Sorry about that. Akash Panda, thank you for the 5, man. I'll take the L on the Vegapunk didn't know the world government had an ancient weapon take. Also, does the chapter title foreshadow how the Void Century came to be? I mean, it's not taking the L because what you were saying was correct as of what we knew. I mean, I felt that it was painfully... he's the world's fucking smartest man, and he put together all of the other pieces. I felt like it should be painfully obvious for him that it's the world government, and all of his motivations were founded on Clover's death, which was, you know, based on... So it's coming from the emotional place of Vegapunk wanting to do something to follow in his friend's footsteps in the fight against the world government. That's why I felt it was just bizarre that he didn't mention that key piece of information to the world. But I felt like up till this chapter, based on the spoilers that I've read, Oda had plausible deniability that, well, Vegapunk technically did not know that the world government, or Vegapunk himself didn't confidently believe that the world government were the ones doing this shit. Therefore, there's plausible deniability as to why Vegapunk left out the most important piece of information from his speech. But now, at least based on the spoilers that I've read, there is no plausible deniability. Vegapunk's just the world's dumbest man of all time. I don't know. It's I think that's kind of dumb. Not kind of dumb, beyond dumb. Like, downright idiotic that Vegapunk did all this and set all this up and did not reveal the most important piece of information, which is like, hey, the world government did this shit. I think it's just bizarre, especially if he already knows he's going to die. There's nothing to lose, and it's for the sake of saving the world, because if the world government keeps firing that weapon, then they all die, right? But let me read the chapter, because I might be talking out of my ass. I'm just talking about the spoilers that I read. Maybe it's more vague in the chapter that itself. Philly, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 8 months, man. Sorry, my contacts are settling in. Haven't seen a Grand Line review video in forever, but I saw his recent video about when it's ending and thought he stole your video. Thought he stole your whole shit until I saw he gave you a ton of credit, lol. Somebody mentioned that, I think, last stream or in a comment or something somewhere. So I was aware of that. I actually went and watched the video because I was curious. And yeah, it's a fine video. He mentions one thing in that, which is that I didn't talk about how this applies, the pattern of arc lengths applies to pre-time skip. The reason I didn't talk about that is because pre-time skip, it gets a little bit messier. Like, you're leading with the fact that Alabasta ends at like chapter 217, 216, which is, you know, it's a little bit further along than the 100 chapter benchmark, although it like the Skypiea and Alabasta together end at chapter 300, therefore it sticks to the benchmark. But I think pre-time skip, it was a little bit, I think post-time skip, if you look at that, it's just more clearly 50, 100, 50, 100, 150, those sort of increments. Pre-time skip, it's a little bit more rough around the edges. So just for the sake of a more clear, coherent argument with fewer holes, I just stuck with post-time skip. But yeah, I agree that pre-time skip, it also fits with that. Shoot, I missed this. Sorry. Let me go back a little bit. Real Linskoff, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 11 months. Usopp getting some shine anytime Elbaf is mentioned is a good sign for what's to come for him. Also, do you have a dream game you've always wanted to see getting into game development and would love some ideas? I do. I do have a dream game that I've always wanted to see, but what it would be pretty damn ambitious. It's like, it's not the most inspired idea, but it's basically, it's me wanting pieces of a lot of different games put into one game. But let me simplify what I would really like to see. I would love a game that's something similar to like a Tears of the Kingdom, somewhat open world or whatever, but much better combat I think is important. So I would love to transpose something like Sekiro type combat in there. The biggest thing for me with those open world type games is I would love a reason to care about a lot of what I'm doing, because in those type of games I feel like a lot of what you get is you just get either better weapons that help you fight more, or maybe some better clothing or something to help you explore a bit more. Everything sort of or you get money to buy better weapons or better clothing. Everything sort of just loops back to the same thing over and over. For me, I feel like I would love a game where I feel like I can actually, like, the things that I'm doing, exploring the world, right, and the achievements I'm doing, one, I would like to see it have a tangible effect on the world itself, so people treating you differently, stuff like that. And two, I would like to actually be able to invest time into doing something, like maybe the money you get allows you to sort of build a city or an empire or something like that, if that makes sense, or just give more incentives, like make me feel as though the things that I'm getting, or like the rewards I'm getting, they shouldn't all just tie back into the same loop of like explore, fight, win rewards that allow you to explore, fight more. If there's something that could be done outside of all that, like again, like maybe the more achievements I do, the more people in the kingdom know about me. Maybe I can be up for election or something like that, for mayor of a town or something. Like, this is all very bare bones stuff, but I'm saying stuff that makes, like, content that is separate from just the exploration combat loop, but stuff that the exploration and combat loop helps feed into, right? Maybe there's, like, political aspects of, I could be growing in status or power or something like that, or I could be building my own army or something, or some whole other aspect of content that the exploration combat loop feeds into, rather than just looping back in on itself, which is like, okay, you explored, you fought some stuff, you won something, now it enables you to explore and fight more stuff. To me, that's just, I don't know, I need some other form of meaning. Yokai Gota, thanks for the 5. First, I thought the flashback was redundant, but seeing Vegapunk preparing for his death and leave seeds for the future tied a nice bow to the themes of this arc. I gotta read the chapter. Let me just read this chapter. Snab, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 23 months, man. Update from Japan. Met the Japanese girl. Finally, we had dinner, and we had so much fun. You all do your best. 1 year ago, I was always in bed, depression. Snab, I'm so happy for you, man. Holy shit. Congratulations. Everybody take Snab as a bit of inspiration for how you two can, you know, move past, I guess. You could achieve the things I suppose you dream about that would make your life feel better, I suppose. I don't know. I don't know enough details of Snab's story, but it has been quite an adventure, and thanks for being a supporter for so long, man. Nathan, thank you for being a Pirate King tier member for 4 months. Hey, Morj, any chance... One second. One second. Alright. Nathan, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 4 months, man. Hey, Morj, any chance there's something else in store for Kuma? Love the stream and videos. Listen, man, Kuma's my biggest worry coming out of all this, because for me it's just like, I feel like we sort of missed the best timing and opportunity for him to have some sort of dramatic sacrifice. So now, either it comes later down the line, which is a small chance, or the best we can hope for is that he doesn't regain his consciousness. But I feel like he's gonna fucking regain his consciousness. I feel like Lilith or someone is gonna work on it. I feel like that's the purpose of her being brought along. Philly, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 8 months. Oh no, we covered this. Fading Phase, thanks for the 5. Vegapunk knew he needed to die, so he went with Sanji. Also, thanks for saving my mom from the house fire. No worries, man. You're welcome. Vegapunk knew he needed to die, so he went with Sanji. That's brutal. That's actually a really funny comment. Deshaun the Chomp Hampton, thanks for Deshaun the Champ Hampton, great name, Mr. Morj. I'm the self-appointed union leader of the stream chat, and we're threatening a strike if our demands are not met. You have until next stream. Oh shit, there's a self-appointed union leader. All right, what are the demands, man? As long as it's anything but being on time, I can do it. Behnort, thank you so much. Thanks for always supporting. This was a phenomenal arc with Kuma, Bonnie, Vegapunk, and the Elders being the spotlights. The only thing I didn't actually like was no Frankie character arc. I feel like this was how do I say this? Egghead, I feel like, was a phenomenal character arc once you... How do I say that? Or, not character. I feel like it was a phenomenal arc for character storylines, just not for the Straw Hats whatsoever. So I think this might have been actually genuinely the least Straw Hat-centric storyline we've ever had. I think the one fix I would kind of like to see with the arc... It's just like... The one thing that I think has been a factor in post-time skip arcs that I wish Oda would just kind of relinquish a little bit is if you're not going to have meaningful storylines for a lot of characters, just don't bother to give them that much screen time in the first place. Like, it's okay to treat the Straw Hats as background characters for the arc. I think it's when it's the in-between where it's like, okay, the arc is very focused on the character storylines of Kuma, Bonnie, Vegapunk, these characters, right? Let them be front and center. We don't need to be cutting away all the time to, like, see, like, oh, Brooks making the ship slide, like, Brooks making the Sunny slide down this area or something, and now Nami, Usopp, and Chopper trying to make the clouds extend so that they can make the ship fall down to the ocean surface so that then they can do some coup event to that. Like, it's okay to resolve that stuff on this. Like, I think all of the best parts of the arc were bogged down a little bit by just the need, it felt like, to cut away to show the other Straw Hats just doing something, even if that something was not interesting. It was like he couldn't have them do nothing, so screen time was given to, like, them to show them doing jack shit, right? Which kind of interrupted the flow of other events in the story, in my opinion, that were much stronger. Yeah, I think it's just, I feel like in past arcs, like, I can go back to a lot of pre-time skip arcs where there were storylines where Oda was just okay with basically being like, yeah, you know, it doesn't matter, like, Zoro doesn't have to be in Drum Kingdom. He can just, he's just not in Drum Kingdom, basically. He shows up once to, like, help out Dalton, basically, but aside from that, you don't need to show him, right? Like, fucking the arc before, Sanji, take him out of Little Garden. Like, you don't need to make, like, just have him show up at the very end for that Mr. Prince bit, but it's okay to just focus on the characters that matter in these storylines. So I think that's the one thing I have to say with Egghead, which is I loved it, but it was also the least Straw Hat-centric storyline ever, and at the same time, for some reason, the Straw Hats just kept taking up a lot of panel time with unnecessary bullshit, basically. So it's complicated. I really do like the arc. I need to give it a reread. I think that I want to see a little bit more, like one more chapter to just confirm we're like out of there, done. Yeah. Ender Ayanami, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 23 months. Is Vegas Fuck one of the dumbest smart characters? Vegas Fuck. His plan was incredibly contrived, convoluted, which only seemed to serve the meta-narrative due to him being more of a plot device than an actual character. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, what's the reality of Vegapunk? It is more so a plot device, which is Oda needs to set up the end game of the story. You need to do this in two ways. One, establishing establishing for the general world, right, that there is shit going down, informing them of what, like, you know, that there's ancient weapons exist, giving them context, right, to some degree. But Oda couldn't have Vegapunk give too much context, so for some random reason he didn't give the important bits. And then two, you need to set up the use of the ancient weapons. Why couldn't Imu just use Uranus up till now? Because he didn't have the Mother Flame, therefore Vegapunk is the plot device that allows the Mother Flame to be a thing. Seraphims, all of these things, Vegapunk is the one piece that basically allows for everything in the final saga to just be set up just like that, right? So I think Vegapunk is a plot device as a character, but I also feel like I liked his speech in terms of, I feel like his speech in itself gave a lot of nuance to his character. So it's complicated in that I do think he was needlessly stupid despite being the world's smartest man. But I do like the character overall, if that makes sense. Okay, Deshaun, the champ Hampton, is coming through with the demands. First, Wano analysis vid. The Wano analysis video will come out September 17th is the goal. Let me double check, make sure that I'm not lying to you guys on that. Yeah, September 17th is the goal that I've planned out for it. So it should be out September 17th. That's the goal. Courtesy chat, in-stream waiting room if you're going to be 15 plus minutes late. In-stream waiting room. That could be a good idea. 3, Morj and Leash. I'm sorry, I don't know about that one. 4, sincere apology to Oof. That's never happening. 5, Bollywood dance. Get out of here. This union is dissolved. It's over. I'm done with it. The early demands were reasonable. The Senate, thanks to the 2. Stop reading spoilers. What if you ruin the story? I mean, I at the same time, I'm a content creator. I write my videos on Thursdays. Or the majority of them I write on Thursdays. Then Fridays, like a lot of recording, doing the image annotations and everything like that, sending out to image guy, thumbnail guy, editor. All of that has to take place over the weekend. Then Mondays, all of the review, final draft process, etc., so that the video can come out Tuesday. I can't read the sport. Like, if the chapter doesn't come out Thursday, I need to do something for next Tuesday's video. Otherwise, I'm streaming today and I'm doing all of this shit. Like, basically, the whole video cycle gets moved back like 1 to 2 days. So, no chapter yesterday meant that I had to read the spoilers. But hopefully it doesn't have to be the norm. Reo Chiha, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 22 months. Love the chapter. Can't stay long. My shift is starting soon, but I'll watch the VOD after work. Okay, let me just read this chapter. First, okay, let's get the stream likes to 100 really quick. The moment it hits 100, I'm reading the chapter. All right? That's the plan. Moment it hits 100. Ann Crust, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 12 months. Do you think part of Kuzan's end goal involves Robin? Could be working with Blackbeard to reach the Strats, plus it explains why he was close to Punk Hazard. And maybe he meets her and Saul at Elbath. Also finish Fire Punch. Dude, now that I'm done with Bloodborne, I think this Sunday's plan is I'm just going to read Fire Punch. And I think I can finish it all in one day. So I'm excited about that. I might even start it over from the beginning. Oh, okay, we got there. We're at 100. 113. All right. Pulling up the chapter. Let me finish out this comment. Do I think Kuzan's end goal involves Robin? I don't know. I think it could involve Robin. Maybe Kuzan wants to learn the true history or something like that. But the thing is that if it involves Robin, he's got Pudding on the crew, so he'll learn the true history regardless. So I don't know if he would need to be with the Straw Hats to learn the true history at this point, because the Blackbeard Pirates have just about as good of a shot at learning the true history. I don't know if that explains why he was close to Punk Hazard. He might have just been close to Punk Hazard because like he's a fucking wandering dude, you know? Or maybe he wanted to speak to Smoker or give a message to Smoker or something like that. I don't know. All right, I'm going to read the chapter now. All right. Cover story. I knew it was a Yamato cover story. Enemies forced to share Odin. Cool. Still don't like Yamato yet. Egg it out and respond. I know that all the vice admirals and shit are already knocked out, right? Oh, fuck. Literally everybody's knocked out. Wake up, you guys. The Strats are escaping. Not the Seraphim. Alright, so Boa Seraphim is back to being evil, basically. The Strats are escaping. This is insane, right? This has got to be the craziest display of hockey of all time. Because I remember last week's chapter, people still had the criticism of like, well, Joy Boy's hockey didn't even knock out vice admirals and stuff. It's like, this is just absolute desolation. Demolition. Kosh Panda says, Morj, did you answer the second part of my super? Let me check. I hope I did. Oh, also does the chapter title foreshadow how the Void Century came to be? Oh, shit. The Void Fortnite. Let me read the chapter. You're saying memories were erased? Because that's actually very possible, considering the sugar story. I got a thing on that. All right? Hold on. Wow, all of them are down. Seriously, that's amazing. That was greater than red hairs, but it didn't seem hostile, did it? Damn. So I remember in the, I think in the spoilers, it was phrased as, okay, hold on. This is a big point. We got any Japanese readers here? We got any Japanese translators? In the spoilers, what I read was the Giants said that hockey might have even been greater than red hairs. That's what I read. That hockey might have even been greater than red hairs. Let me pin a comment saying I'm reacting to the chapter. That's very different than the Giants saying just straight up that was greater than red hairs. That's very, very, very different. Two very different concepts right there. What's correct? We got any Japanese readers? We're going to wait for Viz too, but I think I want Sandman in on this. I think Viz is not reliable either. This is a big difference. I'm just going to pin a comment saying reading the chapter live at the moment. Sandman said these translations are wrong. Oh, shit. Is TCB coming in with the agenda? Yusuf says Joy Boy greater than Red Hair, be for real. No, of course Joy Boy's hockey is stronger than Shanks's. But there's a huge difference in the implication of the Giants saying that might even have been greater than Red Hair's versus them just saying that is greater than Red Hair's. When you're saying that might even have been greater than Red Hair's, that's the characters implying that, like, it's at least somewhat, it feels somewhat close, but Joy Boy's is it's like it feels somewhat close, right? You know, it's like there's plausibility. So in that case, it's cool for Shanks because it's like, oh shit, like even though Joy Boy's hockey is likely obviously greater than Shanks's, it's like for them to even think that Shanks's is comparable, right? Or in the same realm of worth mentioning, right? As a point of like comparison, right? That's a huge hype bit for Shanks, okay? Versus them just flat out saying that's stronger than Shanks's, then there's no real sort of similarity there, right? They're not drawing any sort of comparability. It's just straight up A is greater than B, you know? Like basically if they say that the best hockey of all time, it's like, oh damn, that may even be greater than Shanks's. It's like that's hype for Shanks. It's like shit, like the Giants just saw the craziest hockey ever, and they still feel like to some degree they're like, oh, Shanks is like you know, it might even be greater than Shanks's. Obviously the implication would be that it is greater than Shanks's, but it's putting Shanks in the same breath as Joy Boy, right, in terms of comparability. But just saying Shanks' hockey like Joy Boy's is greater, that's a huge difference, right? Sandman said both are wrong, to be fair. Akash Panda says, Morj, it was interrogative. Was it greater than red hair? That's very different. That's actually extremely different. If they're saying, was it greater than red hairs, then it's basically like, that's actually extremely, extremely hype for Shanks, because then they don't even know, right? Saying it might even be greater, like, that feels as though they're basically saying, like, damn, that was crazy. That feels like it might even have been better than the other shit that we saw, right? So that's putting Joy Boy above Shanks, but not so far out of Shanks' league that it's like pure black and white, right? Saying Joy Boy was greater than Shanks, like TCB has, that makes it black and white. Saying was it greater than red hairs, that makes it just pure ambiguous, which is extremely hype for Shanks, but I feel like I find that hard to believe too. Many Japanese people said there's a comparative question mark in their comment. Wonder why TCB omitted that. This is frustrating. All right, I guess we'll wait and see for Viz. That's actually, I know people can get bogged down in the power scaling type stuff to some degree, but this is actually a really big deal. that the phrasing of that line is a huge deal, because it's like when Oda's writing in lines like that, points of comparison, right? There's no need for Oda to write in points of comparison like that. When he's doing stuff like that, there is a purpose. It's the same way that, when he writes in Mihawk's sword skills are even greater than Red Hair's, that's not a throwaway line. That's important. That's the author establishing something for us. So if Oda shows us the greatest Haki of all time and then writes in some sort of comparison to Shanks, right? This is a big deal. Haki is the single most important ability in One Piece. It tells us a lot about what we were supposed to think of Shanks' level, or how we should vaguely be viewing his full potential. It says a lot, right? That establishes a shit ton if it's being compared to Joy Boy, right? So the exact phrasing of this, it's not actually a bullshit power scaling type thing. It's like, this matters a lot. Like, it should matter in the story. What type of significance Shanks ultimately holds, because there's a big difference between, okay, Shanks is maybe the strongest Yonko alive right now versus like, oh, Shanks is all-time great Haki user or something like that, like literally in the history of One Piece. That's a big difference, and it changes our perspective on the character and his potential role in the story. All right, sorry to belabor that point, but that actually does matter quite a bit. I guess I'll wait for Viz and for more translations for people from Japan or whatever. BeastGamer99 says Joy Boy shows that obviously Joy Boy is stronger than Shanks. Like, it's not. I don't think it's close between Joy Boy and Shanks, because even if Shanks' Haki was literally as good as Joy Boy's, Joy Boy has one of the most broken devil fruits of all time. It wouldn't really be close, but Haki's a big thing on its own, right? So it's interesting to see how significant Shanks' Haki is supposed to be, because that does change our perspective. It's like let me put it this way. If Shanks' Haki is straight up as strong as Joy Boy's, right, that would probably make Shanks the strongest pirate, period, since Roger, if not comparable to Roger, right? Because at the end of the day, Roger was the strongest pirate ever, tied with Whitebeard, but Roger only had Haki. If Shanks is Haki on that level, then it just puts him at Roger's level, which is kind of insane. Like, that stuff matters a lot in One Piece. Haha, thanks for everything, Iron Giant. We're getting out of here. Hee hee, you heard the captains. Let's go, you bastards. We're off to Elbaf, yeah! Okay. The Luffy Nami shot. Vegapunk, what you said earlier isn't sitting right with me. Was this all some sort of gotcha moment for you? Hey now, I couldn't follow everything you were saying, but it was pretty outrageous, wasn't it? Alright. Egghead 2 weeks prior. There are some anomalous readings coming from the power station. You can say that again. Monitor for any fluctuations in particle density and neutron flux. The energy used by the Seraphim is meant to gradually increase over time. This could be a grave error if we miscalculated. I still think that the Seraphim are supposed to get a lot stronger by the end of the story. Someone has tampered with the Mother Flame to steal its energy. Interesting. Every single data point related to the power station has been carefully modified. To pull this off, the culprit has to be a Vegapunk. Was it Lil? Afraid the three of us are the only ones with ironclad alibis. Offline stealth mode. There we go. I like that this chapter clears up a lot of question marks people had as to how York got by, the sharing of information with Vegapunks. It's York. What? The memories she's been synchronizing are phony. Okay, I've also confirmed that the surveillance sales at the scene have been tampered with too. Someone deployed the weaponized sea beast without authorization. Why'd she do that, though? Was that to capture CP0 agents? Yeah, okay, no, never mind. No wonder Cypher Pole keeps coming. Okay. Pythagoras, observe any changes at sea level and monitor blah blah blah. Yeah. Vegapunk literally says, I'm sure of it. He's sure that the flame must have been delivered to the government by one of the weaponized sea beasts. Ah, okay, and that's why she used the weaponized sea beasts. Okay, although now he's saying he's indulging in conjecture. We'll see if the evidence supports my conclusion. Even the deduction is sound. It's hard to speak out loud. Okay. Only a fool lets their greed run amok, and I went and personified mine. I do think Vegapunk generally has good dialogue. Is there any benefit to apprehending your work now that we know? I think that they should have apprehended York. I don't think that's irrelevant. Although I guess they can use that trust. Yeah, that makes sense. Stella, we still have a chance to escape if we flee now. Prepare a boat for the other residents, Caesar. They still have a shot of escaping Egghead. It will be possible for us. The Navy will have issued secret orders to every branch and base by now. They'll chase us to the end of the world. Yep. I disagree with this line of thinking because he's the smartest man in the world. He can't figure out a way to... I think this is more like plot writing, which is like Vegapunk needs to be ready. Like Vegapunk needs to accept that he's going to die. Although Vegapunk, I don't know. Yeah, no. It makes sense. At least here on Egghead we have something O'Hara did 22 years ago. I think that makes sense. We're all thinking the same thing. I like this. What exactly constitutes death for someone like us? I love this shot and this line in front of his brain. The cloud loft technology being significant, I like that too. Stella, what are you doing here? 2 days before the president. Go ahead and speak now. The recording has begun. What we said will come as a big shock. Yeah. The fact that York stole the Mother Flame, the fact that our lives are currently... I like this chapter a lot. We'll have to suffer through all those bombshells over... Yeah. They'll be shocked again and again. The fear we feel for our lives will be brand new to us. But we have put our countermeasures in place, even if things go sideways. I like this a lot. I really like this a lot. This is a really cool way to frame everything. Vegapunk played everyone the entire time. I like this a lot. In spoiler format, it's all very, jumbled up and dense, but seeing it all written out like this, I like. Good morning, everyone. Yep. You will just have to put your faith in me and die. Am I really telling myself to go die? Stella, Emperor Stride, Crew... What? Wait. Oh, and one last thing? What's the one last thing? Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I see. That's funny. Oh no, or is this just recapping the... No, because he wouldn't know that already, right? So this is just recapping the actual events of the arc. My death will set something important into motion. Yep. Okay, I like this. It's gonna be a big mess. We can just sit there and watch you die. We gotta do something. One more thing. It's about the One Piece. What about it? I want you guys to be the ones to find it. Yeah. Yeah, the arc's over. The arc's over. Hold on to this later. Wait for me. Woohoo! We're off to my land, to the land of my dreams, Elbaf. Agababa, all right. Fuck. So here's the thing. So yesterday when I read the spoilers, I was like, I can do two things. Either I can do the Egghead Island arc analysis or a different video. All right. I went with the other video because I needed to read the chapter to feel confident that the arc is like done. right? Like they're out of there. It feels like they're out of there. So not next Tuesday, the following Tuesday will be Egghead Island analysis. That's good. It gives me a bit more time to work on it. And Wano analysis, for those of you who want to ask, again, it's coming out September 17th. Wait for that one. Different analyses can come at different times. Egghead is shorter, simpler, mostly already done. All right, everybody. We're done reading the chapter live. I like that chapter a lot. Great chapter. Really, really good chapter. Necessary chapter to fill in the blanks. All right, let me catch up on this real quick. Also, let's get the stream likes to 200 real quick because the chapter is really good. Where were we at? Joy Boy. Okay, now I'm catching up to people arguing about their Shanks and Joy Boy shit. Do you think... Okay, no. Okay, Goomba Boomba, thanks for the 2. I still think there's a handful of more chapters, 3 to 5 chapters. So I think we might get one more chapter wrapping what happens to, like Saturn left behind on Egghead, unless I'm crazy. No, Kizaru's on a ship. Saturn's still on Egghead. I assume Kizaru was not knocked out by the Conqueror's Haki, so we might get, like, a wrap-up chapter or 2. And then we're going to hit a phase which you would call the in-between, where it's, like, outside world stuff. Do you count that as part of Egghead, not part of Egghead? I don't know. But we might get one, max 2 more chapters on Egghead, I guess, just to maybe wrap up some stuff. So holding off on the analysis one more week, I think, is maybe not a bad idea. But it would have been nice to just be able to drop it next Tuesday. But it's possible we get something significant next chapter that makes me feel like, oh, that's thematically significant, good to add to the analysis. Behano, thanks a lot. If you want more reason to play games, to me that's usually good writing and characters and plot. Video games, in my opinion, are the best storytelling medium. I am not going to think video games are the best storytelling medium ever, but I do respect them more as storytelling mediums nowadays. I definitely don't think video games are the best storytelling medium. I think they're probably pretty low down in terms of actually good storytelling mediums, but I do agree that, you know, good writing, characters, and plot can help. But I feel like I would like something more tangible than like Tears of the Kingdom, when rewards are like cutscenes that you can get to a story. Those don't feel like satisfying rewards to collect, like the different tiers, you know? I do feel like a whole different aspect of gameplay that can be included where you can feel like you're growing thanks to the other stuff you're doing through exploration and combat. I think that is more interesting to me, personally. Like, a small little idea if it is like, oh, well, in Tears of Kingdom, you can build your own house, right? That was fun when I realized that you could do it. It just turned out that the house building is very limited and only gives you so much enjoyability for such a period of time. But building off that concept, like if you incorporate another element of gameplay that you feel like you're growing and able to build, etc., through this form of gameplay, exploration and combat, it adds another layer that I think would keep me invested for longer. I feel like Elden Ring, I will enjoy the exploration combat loop more because the combat is going to be more satisfying and fulfilling, but ultimately I do think that I would most enjoy an open world game where I'm feeling like the exploration combat is actually building some other element of the gameplay for me at the same time. I think that's just my personal thought, and I don't think I've personally seen that yet, but I also haven't played a lot of shit. 80 Strut, thanks for the 2. I think Oda Senpai needs to add Morj to the crew. Oh, if only. That'd be nice, huh? Red Agrid, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 7 months, man. What are your thoughts on Oda keeping Kuma alive is to explore Buccaneer lore further at Elbaf? Any hope for Kizaru's character development? I do have strong hopes for Kizaru's character development. I don't know if we're going to get it by the end of this little arc, but I think that this may have been set up for Kizaru to get something really good down the line. Because we, the reader, are never going to look at Kizaru again the same, right? We no longer going to view him as just like the obedient admiral tool of the world government who's just a hype fighter. There's clearly some chain of events that kind of has started for him, and we understand the depth and nuance to who he is a lot more. So I feel like there's a ton of potential for Kizaru down the line. Keeping Kuma alive to explore the Buccaneer lore further, that's great, but that's like a plot purpose. I think in terms of character writing and dramatic purpose, I think Kuma is best served at least being an example of tragedy or sacrifice for the sake of a brighter future. I think reversing that and still getting the brighter future would be frustrating to me for a shit ton of reasons that I don't think are worth getting into at the moment, because I think there's no point in critiquing things that haven't happened yet, you know? Best to keep a positive outlook, I think. Basam El Madawi, thanks for the 5. This is probably the most open-ended the series has been since the beginning of the time skip. This is like Oda opening a time capsule from 27 years. Yeah, that's actually very true, because like you figure that in the final saga, most things would sort of click together and become more obvious, and it's kind of like, well, these are the things we need to check off. Yeah, I don't even know if the story's going to end at like Laugh Tale or Race for Laugh Tale or at Marijua, the final war. There's so many questions now. Yokai Gota, thanks to the 5. Joy Boy greater than Shanks. Since Luffy will most likely surpass Joy Boy, then that means Zoro greater than the Shanks. And since Mihawk is his end goal, that means Mihawk greater than Red Hair. I don't know if I followed that. I obviously followed Joy Boy greater than Shanks. Since Luffy will surpass Joy Boy, I think this is the jump I don't get. Why does that mean that Zoro greater than Shanks? I think end of story Zoro might be greater than Shanks. I think that's totally possible. I just don't think that you're missing, in terms of your ABC logic there, like your premises, you're missing a premise there that what you would need is basically something saying that Zoro equals Luffy. I think you would need something like that. If you think Zoro equals Luffy, or Zoro's like greater than or equal to Luffy, or like Luffy's greater than or equal to Zoro, or like Zoro and Luffy, if you argue that Zoro, if you had a premise in there which is like Zoro's always almost as strong as Luffy or something, then yeah, you would have an argument that Luffy be greater than Joy Boy by the end means that Zoro would be greater than Shanks by the end. That would make sense, but you're missing that piece of it, and I don't know if I would even agree with that. I don't think I would. Double Arrow Lee, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 19 months. I mean, we know that Roger's greater than Shanks if we believe what Kaido implied, so it might just be a case of Giants having no other close comparison. How do I say this? What Kaido implied doesn't mean that... Kaido threw Shanks right in there with Roger in terms of his... like how he viewed people. The only thing we even know about Kaido and Shanks' interaction is Kaido did not want to fight Shanks when it came down to it. I know people will argue, well, Kaido didn't have his full fleet and stuff, and guess what? That's headcanon. We don't know whether or not he had his full fleet. We do know that Kaido showed up with a force that he believed was at least strong enough to take on Whitebeard's crew, since that was his goal. But he ran into Shanks and his crew instead and decided he did not want any piece of that. That's what we know about Kaido and Shanks' relationship, and we know that Kaido puts Shanks right up there with Roger, Whitebeard, Rocks, and Odin, the guy that defeated Kaido, or at least scarred him a long time back, right? So we don't really have a point of comparison for how Kaido views Shanks. I would believe that Roger is greater than Shanks. I'm just saying that the reasoning you have there, that Kaido implied Roger is greater than Shanks, I don't think that fully flies. I still think Roger is greater than Shanks for sure. I think Shanks is hard to place at the moment. So when you say it might be a case of Giants having no other close comparison, I would agree, but it depends on what do you call? That's not what this is really about, though, because it's not really about, if the Giants happen to see Conqueror's... How to explain this? If you see what Luffy did at Fishman Island, right, Conqueror's Haki release, and then you saw what Joy Boy does here, Conqueror's release, it doesn't matter if those are your only two Conqueror's releases you've ever seen. You would obviously understand that Joy Boy's is significantly greater than Luffy's, right? The Giants don't say that, as far as we know. They're questioning which one was greater. You know what I mean? It's like if you see Zoro cut a building, and then you see if you see like Zoro cut a building pre-time skip, and then you see Mihawk cut an iceberg, you would just be like, oh, you wouldn't be like, which one was greater? You'd be like, well, Mihawk's is obviously greater, right? So it doesn't really matter if those are the only two Conqueror's Haki releases they've seen ever. The fact that they seem to feel like there's a question mark as to which is greater, that's what's exciting for Shanks. The problem is we don't know what the translation is exactly, and I don't know whose bias is where. Because what the Giants say here is that Conqueror's Haki was greater than Red Hair's. If that's the case, then it's pretty cut and dry. It just means that Joy Boy is greater than Shanks. It might be significantly greater than Shanks even, like by leaps and bounds. So that's the question mark. I would like to find out more so what is the Giants' exact translation. Are they saying... Because there's three tiers here. They say, Joy Boy's, that was greater than Shanks's, right? Or they're saying, that might have even been greater than Shanks's. Or they might be straight up questioning, was it even greater than Shanks's, right? That's a sliding scale of like hype for Shanks. If it's A, then it's not hype at all. B, then it's pretty hype. C, then it's extremely hype, if that makes sense. Moving on. Archangel, thanks for bringing Yonko to your member for 15 months. Yep, definitely makes a difference to say that Shanks is one of the most prominent pirates now to something like Shanks being among the top 5 hockey users ever. Yeah, there's like a huge difference there, and it has tremendous story implications for what Shanks' role would be. If, like, essentially, put it this way, it's not just a power scaling thing. If the implication is, if we're going with the extreme implication, right? If the extreme implication is that there is a hockey user alive today who is as good at hockey as Prime Joy Boy, that changes how we view the entire world conflict, right? That means that Shanks would be like a legitimate threat to someone like Emu or something like that. That means that Shanks would be someone who can solo all 5 Gorosei or something like that. That changes it essentially means that there's somebody with Joy Boy level hockey in the current world today, which just, it alters our view of the entire world conflict of One Piece, right? Versus Shanks just being another Yonko, a la Kaido, Big Mom. They're very strong, but we would imagine that they're not individually that big of a deal in the grand scheme of like overthrowing Emu, all the Gorosei, all the God's Knights, yada, yada, yada. 80 Strahd, thanks for the 2. Who's going to join, Lilith or Bonnie or both even? Lilith or Bonnie or both even? I think Bonnie is clear. Lilith is a big question mark. I hope Lilith, I kind of hope Lilith doesn't join just because I feel like she eats into too many other roles. Frankie's role, arguably Chopper's role, fucking smarter than Robin, a lot of shit, you know? Eric Terlato, thanks for the 2. Happy birthday, bro. Don't know if people in chat are spamming it's my birthday, but whatever. It would even mean like Shanks could be better than Roger was. Like, the thing is that, what do you call? Like, consider it's not even just about Shanks himself. It's all the things that would affect. Because if Shanks' hockey is on tier with Joy Boys, like, forget Shanks and Emu, what does that mean for Blackbeard? Because most people believe that Blackbeard will defeat Shanks by the end of the story. This totally changes our perception of the type of threat that Blackbeard becomes by the end, right? If Blackbeard by the end of the story is so strong that he could defeat someone with Joy Boy's level of hockey, that's huge. That changes how we view Luffy's progress in the story and what Luffy's going to need to reach, you know? Luffy's going to need to reach that level of hockey just to defeat Blackbeard. And it would also mean that maybe Blackbeard by the end of the story is a greater threat than even Emu himself, you know? Goomba Boomba, thanks for the 5. Vegapunk mistakenly accusing Lilith only for it to be York made him realize that he is not in a position to judge who is in the wrong/right during the Void Century. I guess that's the case, but that doesn't seem to be the implication. That doesn't seem to be what he was thinking. Like, that's a nice headcanon thing to throw in, but I don't think that that's consistent with his line of thinking here. It seems to be more so just like, oh, I guess it's not Lilith. I was mistaken there. But throughout that, he's also talking about how the world government is the problem, how it's very likely that the world government has the ancient weapons, how he's trying to see if the evidence supports his conclusion, etc. Party McFly, thanks for the 5. Hey, Mr. Morj, loved your recent video. Who do you think was Luffy's ancestor on Joy Boy's crew? Joy Boy himself or someone else? I think it would be Joy Boy himself. I think the Monkey D line makes the most sense. I mean, the Monkey D line is the only one where we have 3 straight generations right now of crazy strong characters, right? Like, Garp was, you know, right up there with Roger, Whitebeard, Rocks as the strongest characters on the planet in, like, the golden age of pirates, when the strongest era ever, right? Then you got Dragon, who might be the strongest character not named Emu today, right? Might be, right? Dragon is a Monkey D in his prime, like, the most wanted man in the world, head of the Revolutionary Army, right? Really, really significant. I imagine Dragon is probably comparable to Shanks in strength nowadays. Comparable, take that as you will, up, down, whatever, right? And then you got Luffy, who's Joy Boy reincarnate. Not reincarnate, literally, you know what I'm saying. I feel like I wouldn't be surprised, especially because Emmet literally mistook Luffy for Joy Boy when he first met him. Eric Trelato, thanks for the 2. Morj, Shanks hype? I mean, it depends on the translation, man. If the translation is just as we get in TCB, which is Joy Boy's hockey is greater than Shanks's, then it's not really any sort of hype whatsoever. It's just like the Giants saw 2 Conquerors hockey releases, and they're like, oh, that one's clearly better. That doesn't hype the other one, you know? But if the translation is a different translation, then I think it could be pretty exciting. Sean Easton, thanks for the 5. Hey, Morj, sorry your video got copyright struck. I'll be doing a social media fast until October. Looking forward to catching up on chapters. Hey, I hope that goes well for you. That sounds like it could be a very productive time for you. It's not a big deal. It's just, for those of you who don't know, last week I reacted to, or earlier this week I reacted to the anime remake, First Look. And you all, not literally every one of you in chat, but a lot of people in that chat, very confidently told me that I would not get copyright struck because it's a YouTube video, etc., yada, yada, yada. I went along with chat's assumptions, and what do you know? The video is copyright struck. So that shit happens, you know? That's why I'm safe. I understand that other people are like, hey, well, this YouTuber did this or that and it didn't happen. Cool. YouTube is not always consistent in when certain things get copyright struck or not. That's just the case. If you talk to enough content creators, you know that some content creators will be like, I got copyright struck just for using like a tiny bit of this in a video, whereas other ones use that all the time, right? And there's not always a shit ton of reason or consistency as to why it's happening, why some channels get flagged sometimes, why some don't. It's just the way it is. Growth Stonks, thanks for the 2. Shanks is the God King, Shanks is the strongest. Oh, god damn it. All right. Don't like what I'm feeding into here. Dreams Never Die, thanks for the 5. What is your take on Yuruj role in Elbaf and the Atom Tree being parallel to Yggdrasil, and possibly holding up multiple Sky Islands? Ooh, possibly holding up multiple Sky Islands. To be honest, I haven't really thought too much about what's at the top of the Atom Tree. I think that's very exciting to think about. I wonder if we're going to go up there by the end of the story. I should think so. I wonder what would be up there. That's interesting. Uruj's role, yeah, maybe Uruj is chilling right up there right now. And maybe they go up and they run into Uruj. Uruj having a role in Elbaf, I really don't know, man. I don't think Oda forgot about Uruj, so one thing that I've noticed that I think is interesting is that if you look at the supernova, right? So if you look at the supernova pre-time skip, I feel like there's a bit of a pattern that I'm feeling, which is not a pattern, not a crazy pattern, but the way it turned out is there were 2 supernova. The supernova kind of went in a spectrum pre-time skip, right? Where there were the ones that we knew were super important from the top, like Kid and Law. Then there were the ones that also seemed really significant, that got hyped up a lot, like Hawkins with the 250 million berry and like standing up, holding out against Kazar the longest. Apu, X Drake, right? Those middle ground supernova that also had crazy high bounties in the like 200 million plus range, right? And then at the bottom, we had the lower level supernovas that a lot of people underestimated, like Bonnie, Capone Beige. Nobody thought Capone Beige would be that relevant. He was a very forgettable supernova to a lot of people. Uruj with his measly, 108 million berry bounty or something, like lower than the first mates of other crews. So what I feel like has happened in the new world is like, okay, the ones that we knew were going to be important, Kid and Law, they remained important, right? Kid to be seen, but still, big role in Wano, right? Then those hyped up middle ones, right? Those other hyped up, I guess, close to top tier ones like Hawkins, Apu, X Drake, right? They turned out to have been red herrings, characters that Oda was just gonna axe off or have them lose early on to I guess make the new world seem more intimidating, right? I guess that was the idea, although I don't think it came across that well, but I guess that was the idea. And then the kind of pattern that we've been seeing is that the lowest level supernovas, they turned out to be actually extremely important, right? The ones that Oda was kind of saving. Like Capone Beige, he has a fucking huge role in Whole Cake Island. Capone Beige was had the largest plot significance of any supernova after Law. I would argue even more so than Kid. Kid's role in Wano, it's at least close. Like Capone Beige became a huge pivotal role in Whole Cake Island. Like he carried a lot of that arc. And then he had a whole cover story and everything coming out after that. Then Bonnie, Egghead, Bonnie's arc, becoming a Straw Hat. Turns out that Bonnie was insanely important. And that storyline was one of the ones that Oda was really saving. And then Uruj, the one that Oda's kind of been holding off on. All we know is that he took out a Sweet Commander. I just think it's interesting that the ones that were more low-key and lower bounties, less hype early on, the ones that we didn't even get to see, like Bonnie and Capone Beige, we didn't even get to see them fight a Pacifista. They were just out of there. Those are the supernova, and Uruj did pretty bad. Like he was kind of being looked down on in the Pacifista fight, etc. Those are the ones that really ended up being, seem to have ended up being very significant down the line. So Oda was kind of playing possum with those characters. So I wouldn't be surprised if Uruj has a big role. I don't know if Elbaf will be it, but I like the possibility. Behenort, thanks a lot. Oda actually decided to make Sanji the straw that bonded with Vegapunk the most, and I think that might be because he was killed by Sanji's future fights. Yeah, that's a good possibility. Yeah, like, build that bond just because, that's how Vegapunk's ultimately going to go out in the end. So there's a bit more emotional connection there. Like, it would be kind of random if it's just Brook, who I don't know if Vegapunk spoken 2 words to, ultimately was the one that Vegapunk died side by side with. The Low Man, thanks for the 5. I know Vegapunk flatlined, but is there still a chance he can make it? Because why would have they brought a dead man on the ship? So there was that line, that panel, which was like, what does death even mean for people like us, right? With the big brain in the vat and everything like that. I wonder if that goes somewhere. In a sense, Vegapunk still lives as Lilith still lives, right? I think that's interesting. Akash Panda, thanks a lot, man. Thanks for the 5. The world seems so big as it initially opened up. Now it seems smaller as we know most of it. What point in the story did the world seem the biggest? That's a great question. It does seem, I would argue it seems smaller in a sense, but it feels like if you step back, the whole picture is crazy big still, and there's so many aspects we still don't know, like all of the Gods' Nights, right? So I feel like the world still feels big now that we have the whole picture. I felt like the world felt the biggest to me coming out of the time skip, like post Marineford. I felt like that's when it felt the most open. Like there's so many things to explore. We know about these Yonko, but we don't know the details. Just the whole concept of the New World. We knew bits and pieces of the revolutionary agenda, but we didn't know the Revolutionary Army yet. I feel like coming out of the post time skip was when, and like heading into the New World was when it felt like, okay, literally, like this is a gigantic expanse of just factions and everything like that are at play here, and we need to delve deeper into them. I think that I also feel like in the New World, early pieces of the New World, we actually started to dig deeper into the nitty gritty. So it wasn't just like, okay, there's Yonko empires and stuff. Once we got to Big Mom's crew, we were getting like more layered depth into it. Like, okay, she's got these commanders and then these like Rook, Knight, Bishop roles and like ministers of islands. And then it was like, oh shit. So, and then we started getting underworld brokers introduced in the whole Kick Island arc as well. So I think maybe around then it started to feel really big. I think in Wano, things started to narrow down a little bit by the end of it, and it felt like we had a tight concept of pretty much all the players that existed. We got Green Bull by that point. But then I think in recent chapters, it feels like it's kind of blown up again a little bit more, because now we're starting to understand it's not just the present, it's also the past that's going to be relevant, so the remnants of Joy Boy's crew to some degree. The Gods' Nights we're learning about. Man with the Burn Scar, Rocks Pirates and the Rocks Pirate remnants. I think that I think the world still feels big. It felt like there was the most unfilled in. I felt like post Marineford was when it was most open without us understanding aspects of it. So there's most gray areas and like shadowy figures to kind of uncover. Now we know all of the stuff that we had question marks about since Marineford, and we have more information, and the world is actually bigger than we thought coming out of Marineford. But the question marks that we have are fewer. They still exist, though, so it still feels like a really big world to me. Matt, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 5 months. Tomorrow, I'm going to a festival specifically for one of my favorite foods of Dorian Broggy, beer. Oh, you're going to a beer fest. The local community is accidentally celebrating the culture of Elbath. Hopefully it's sunny, too. That sounds like a good time, man. Yeah, hopefully it is sunny. Hopefully it's not too hot out there. I don't know what country you're in, but Matt sounds American. It'll probably be a good time, I'm sure. Thomas Davis, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 15 months, man. If Vegapunk knows York was bad, why not just apprehend her and tell the world government is evil? Why wait to die or even die at all? This plan seems kind of dumb. Look, man, I would agree. At the very least, you could interrogate York or like get the true memories and find out what's actually happening rather than this speculation. I think not telling the world that the world government is evil is downright criminal. Because you need to kind of fucking lead with that. Because he told them a bunch of shit that is really not relevant to them. Joy Boy, the Void Century War, yada yada. Like, again, people today, like, my country, America, the country I'm in, it wasn't even founded 800 years ago. If I find out today that, hey, Christopher Columbus was evil, like we did find out, it's like over the course of my lifetime, that was more so unearthed or brought to the forefront of public information, like, hey, Christopher Columbus was evil. It's like, damn, that's bad. It doesn't functionally change the way, like, I live my life, or the way I, like, my view of the country is more so based on the way things are today rather than how we started, right? I've been more focused on the problems that we have today rather than 400 years ago. 800 years ago, it's like, who fucking gives a shit? Like, why? The random fucking person would not give a shit. If you tell people, like, hey, the fucking sea level is rising because your government is firing weapons that will raise the sea level and drown you all, that's all you need. It's a 30-second memo, right? You drop the proof, like explain, like, hey, this is my prediction, the Lucia Kingdom, yada yada. You drop whatever proof or evidence you can. You paint out what it is. But talk about, like, 800 years ago, the fucking British Empire did this or that. That's not fucking relevant to, like, what the fuck? Like, I mean, look at fucking Japan. Japan's government today is not, like, you think that's even fucking close to what the fuck they were doing in the World War II? It's like, so, like, that's a fucking 100-year span, and it's not even relevant at this point, you know? It's like, it's ludicrous that was what he harped on so much, when it should have been, like, emergency, everybody get fucking worried because this is the shit that's gonna happen, and it's probably the world government, right? The biggest thing is that he did know, even if he didn't know that the world government fired these weapons conclusively, although it seems like from all of his dialogue in this chapter, that's basically what was in his mind and why he felt this was so important, to alert the people of the world to that conclusion that he was compiling mental evidence for. He already knew the world government was really bad from the Clover incident. That's why this whole journey to study the Void Century even began. You know what I mean? Skid Row says, but what if Christopher Columbus was the leader of the Americas still to this day? Yeah, that would be really bad, except that's the part Vegapunk doesn't know about, right? And that's not, he didn't tell the people that. If he knew about Emu, then he should tell people that, right? That would be bad, but that's not the case. From Vegapunk's perspective, it's just like, I need to give people a history lesson on some shit that's just straight up not relevant to them. Riot says he said he didn't know definitively on the recent stuff. But it doesn't matter. He already knows the world government is evil, and he already strongly believes that this is what it was used for, like, extremely confidently. He also, as another commenter said, Thomas Davis said, if he didn't know, and he thinks he's going to die anyway, and he's setting up all this shit, interrogate York and find out the answers. Get her real memories. Like, what the fuck? Like, it's not like he was totally in the dark. It's like, I strongly believe it's the world government. And the whole reason I started studying all this shit is because of the world government. And it almost definitely has to be the world government. And the most important thing to tell the world right now would be, like, how to protect themselves from these weapons being fired, etc., right? And the simplest way that I could find out whether or not it's the world government is just fucking making York tell me. But you know what? I'm just not going to do any of that. It doesn't seem relevant to me. Let me instead go into a spiel about the Void Century, which isn't relevant to anybody. And the only moderately significant piece of information I'm giving them is that the world is going to flood, but I'm not going to tell them by whom or how to stop it or how to do anything about it. It's kind of crazy. Clyde says he doesn't believe they're evil as he passes no judgment, himself being responsible for countless deaths. Here's the thing, Clyde. It doesn't matter if he believes that they're evil or not. Saying, I think the world government is evil, sure, that's subjective, I suppose, depending on your stance on morality. Saying the world government are the ones that are firing the weapons that will drown all of you, that's objective. It requires no sort of moral judgment from him. It would just straight up be him explaining something that's helpful for the people to understand, which is most likely it is the world government that is firing this weapon. It is almost 100% possible. He also chose to ignore doing the one action that would allow him to close any room of doubt in his mind that it is the world government that's firing this weapon, which is just York. He's got the source of the truth right there, right? All that matters ultimately, fine. Don't want to tell the people the world government is evil? That's okay. Just tell them what they're doing so that you can actually help people. Otherwise, there's no purpose to any of this, right? He doesn't have to say they're evil. Let the people of the world decide, like, hey, is the government that's firing an ancient weapon at us repeatedly to kill all of us potentially evil? We think they might be evil. At a certain point, it doesn't matter if you feel that they're evil or not. It's just, hey, you're all gonna die. It's like if the fucking sun is being dropped, or like a fucking meteorite's coming on the planet. It's like, well, I'm not gonna tell people that a meteorite's gonna come hit the planet because I don't want to pass judgment on the fucking meteorite. It's like, motherfucker, just tell people that a meteorite's gonna come and what we could do to stop it. you know? Anyway. Morj don't pop up a vessel. The more I think about it, the more likely I am to pop a vessel. So, I don't know. It's complicated because I love this chapter a lot. I love the way the chapter was framed and the way that the revelations came about. And I like Vegapunk as a character. The things that he did not tell the people of the world, those are more so, it feels like just Oda decisions because he can't have the story move to that point just yet. So he has to exclude those, right? That's what's frustrating. Because I like the writing around Vegapunk as a character overall, and I like this chapter. I don't like the like seemingly backwards logic, like the zero logic decisions of how the whole speech played out. Ronald Jackson 1 says, to be fair, if he said the world government is going to drown you all, it would be complete chaos. But he already told people that somebody is going to drown you all. That already causes complete chaos. Telling them the source, the only thing that would allow them to take some sort of logical action to prevent themselves being drowned, right? Because at the moment, if you're just telling everybody you're going to all fucking die, that doesn't prevent chaos either. At least telling people the source of the problem, there's still going to be chaos, but there can be some sort of efforts to try and mitigate that, right? At the moment, all they can do is try and get to higher ground, right? If you tell them that it's the world government doing it, then they can do both. They can try to get to higher ground, or there could be concerted effort to do something about the world government. But there's chaos either way. It's just that one route provides a potential solution so they don't all just die. Daniel says, the world already hates the Celestial Dragons. What will really wake up the world from its current condition? Maybe telling them that the Celestial Dragons are about to kill all of them. There's a difference between, like, we hate billionaires versus, hey, all the billionaires are gonna fucking nuke the planet in, like, a month if you guys don't do something about it. That's probably it, right? I think that would be the key point of difference. Sorry if I'm being extra sarcastic here, but I'm just like, there's not really room to defend Vegapunk here whatsoever in my mind. Or at least the way the speech was written. I think it's just like very black and white that I think before this chapter there was the plausible deniability that Vegapunk didn't even think it was the world government doing all this, yada yada. But now it's just like, dude, you thought it was the world government. You very, very confidently thought it was the world government. And you could have even found out for yourself who it was if you just made York tell you. But you decided instead that York is irrelevant to this. I don't know. All right. Sorry, continuing. Stephen Guy, thanks for bringing Yonka to your member for 1 month. Too many predictions for such a low-key chapter. Do you think there's any chance for Kid/Law Club Buttermans to save them and their crews? Listen, Kid's crew does not have a fucking Club Butterman. I fucking know that. And for both their ships are fucking done, right? They're done for. They don't have ships anymore as far as I know. I don't think the Club Butterman survives past the death of the ship. That's partly what made it so sad. Yeah. Sorry, catching up here. Where to, man? Thanks for the 5. 800-year-old hockey in a not scared emu from half the planet away. I don't see Shanks being able to do that with his whole person today. Just my 2 cents. I agree. I'm not trying to say, like, I'm not trying to draw the point of comparison between Shanks versus Joy Boy, personally. I'm trying to find out if the chapter is trying to draw a point of comparison. If the translation is just straight up, Joy Boy's hockey is greater than Shanks's, there's nothing to discuss here. It's just what we would already expect, right? If the translation actually opens the comparison and it says might even be greater or was it even greater, then it's suddenly like, oh, well, now it's something worth discussing, right? So I'm trying to actually find out, is it something worth discussing just now? Blackleg, thanks for being a member for 22 months. Anyone ask about the DK Renaissance in Super Smash Bros. Melee? I fucking hate low tiers and mid tiers in Melee, unless I'm playing them myself, in which case it's fun. But I don't find that shit hype. I find it incredibly lame and stupid and cheesy and gimmicky and playing on people's lack of matchup knowledge. Yeah, that's my only thoughts. I think that there's something to be said that it was Junebug, right, who placed really well. I think there is something to be said for the fact that Junebug has been a player for a long ass time, and he actually couldn't be successful with high tiers, as far as I understand. Not successful, but like, rank top, get top placements with high tiers. But switching to DK got him a lot of success. To me, that basically it feels like I'm just gonna call it what it is, which is like, no, it's not like he's so skilled that he's able to beat all these players playing top characters despite playing at a disadvantage. It's like, no. When you had that same advantage that they had, you couldn't beat them. So switching here to DK, that's what's allowing you to beat them. To me, that suggests that at a certain point, yeah, a character's weaknesses can be really great, like a DK or mid tier, low tier, but matchup knowledge ultimately matters a lot more in the grand scheme of things. So the advantage of opponents not having matchup knowledge and you playing a cheesy, gimmicky character which they don't know what to do about, I think that's a greater advantage than the disadvantage of playing a DK. Does that make sense? So, no, I don't respect people who do well with mid tiers and low tiers because I genuinely think that matchup knowledge is so significant in these games. Like, because you got to remember, in Melee, the character roster of relevant characters that people believe are relevant is so fucking tight that people exclusively practice against the same, 7 characters. That's it. Exclusively practice. The only time you're playing against a low tier is if you run into them on unranked or something for fun or whatever, right? That's it. That's the only time you're running into low tiers. So yeah, you're playing a better character, but you are very likely going to lose a random set to somebody who's grinded. I think the advantage of the DK having grinded 1,000 hours of DK Fox, I think that advantage coming in is greater than the advantage of your character technically having better frame data, technically having better punishes, etc. Because if you don't know your punishes on the other character, if you don't know the execution steps, if you don't know the intricacies of the matchup, then even if they have the worst character, by a good margin even, they've got a huge advantage in that they actually know what the fuck is happening throughout the match. I don't respect people who do well with mid tiers and low tiers. I think it's just gimmicks. I think they should play real characters and see if they, I don't know. He did play real characters, right, for a long time, and he wasn't this successful. I think that factually means that the advantage of playing DK is bigger. The advantage of playing a character that nobody knows how to play against is bigger than the disadvantage of that character technically being a mid-tier. It's not a bad take. It's just, it's objectively true, because if you can compare the results of this guy with top-tier characters to mid-tier characters, and you say mid-tier is higher, that means that's an advantage, right? That means he was actually disadvantaged trying to compete with people on the same matchup knowledge playing field before. Essentially taking a dip in your character's frame data, speed, maybe combos, etc., seems to be worth it if you're getting the advantage of thousands of hours of matchup knowledge that your opponents won't have. That's not an L take. That's objectively proven in the results. You can compare his results before and after. That's why I don't think mid tiers are hype. That's why I never thought that Amsa's hype. Just playing characters that nobody knows how the fuck to play against, there's a significant matchup knowledge gap there that makes up for any sort of individual disadvantages that a character might have. Brothership says a noob. It's objectively true. Again, if you want to argue this, you can just look at his results before and after DK. That's objective. That's the easiest way to compare. We've got control variables here. I don't know. Mokel Jordan says, Mr. Adjust DK, please, Morj. No, I don't think DK's broken. I think in the state of Melee as it is, which is there's only so many relevant characters, people don't have the matchup knowledge to do well against mid-tiers and low-tiers, people who grind those excessively. Basically, let's say DK was a very popular character, and you were getting plenty of times to play against DK regularly, then yeah, DK would be, DK would get his ass whooped every time, right? But with the state of Melee, nobody's playing DK, so the matchup knowledge advantage is that much bigger. It's essentially relative. I'm not saying the character should be a top tier or a high tier. It's not. But I'm saying objective, functionally speaking, you get an advantage playing a character nobody knows how to play against. The Bee's Knees says he beat up his locals with DK for many months now. You'd think they'd just learn the matchup. Yeah, but he's probably better than everybody. He was probably already better than everybody in his local scene in the first place. Oof says objectively true. Okay, I'd love to hear the argument for this. If he was not getting anywhere close to these results, playing better characters, right, top tier characters, and then he switched to DK and got much, much, much better results, how would it not be objectively true that he gained an advantage switching to a character that nobody knows how to play against, right? Because if you want to say his advantage was playing with higher tier characters, then the results would reflect him getting a boost in results from playing the higher tier characters. DK would lower his results. If instead he's getting better results with DK, that means that he gained some sort of advantage, right? You're missing the difference between in a vacuum characters' abilities, because in a vacuum DK is worse, versus the reality of human gameplay experience, in which matchup knowledge makes a much bigger difference than what on paper a character's strengths and weaknesses are. Thousands of hours of matchup experience that the other person lacks allows a lot of more exploitable game elements in interactions that you're gaining from playing this not played character often. Does this make sense? Like, I think this fairly easily proven A to B, because you can just compare the results before and after, right? Like Yagmi says, the disadvantage is that the character is bad. I agree, but the advantage that he's gaining is that nobody knows how to play the character. Now, the question that we're trying to solve is the disadvantage of losing the frame data, losing some of the priorities, etc., losing some of the speed, is the disadvantages of losing that outweighed by the advantages gained by nobody knowing how to play you in a matchup, right? The simple way to measure this question is compare the before and after. Compare when he was playing a good top-tier character to when he played this mid-tier character. If the mid-tier character gets him better results, then that means that the advantage of no players having matchup knowledge of how to play DK is greater than the disadvantage of choosing to play a mid-tier. It's very ABC logic. Like, you would actually have to be incredibly biased not to see that. Does that make sense? Like, what's the argument around this? I don't even know what to say. Nobody's attacking the argument. Like, people are just saying, like, no, this doesn't make sense. It's like, examine the argument. Like, just think about the argument for a moment. Because there's already a measurable weight, right? It would be immeasurable if he started with DK as his main, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe he's just really good with DK. But if he started with top tiers as his mains and didn't do well with them, and then switched to a supposedly worse character and then started playing a lot better, then you know where the advantage is coming from, right? You know that the advantage gained from lack of matchup knowledge by his opponents is greater than any of the on-paper disadvantages of switching to a lower tier character. It's so simply measurable because it's all the same player. You understand what I'm saying? All right, I don't know what to say. Okay, all right. Oof says you sound more like a spectator fan than an objective analyst. Well, like, what's the argument? Like, what's your counter argument? I need a counter argument. I need to dissect why that's incorrect. Thomas David says the game has been out for 20 years. The players should know the matchup. Yeah, but the reality of the Melee landscape is that nobody really commonly plays DK, right? The players should know the matchup. That's fine. I'm just saying, but at the end of the day, people don't play the matchup, so he's winning off the fact that they don't know the matchup, not that he's intrinsically, like, smarter than they are. Terrell T says the game is like a million years old. They know the matchup. Dude, nobody's, like, a Fox player is not practicing against a DK. Like, even top players are not practicing against DK the same amount that they're practicing against, like, Spaceys or Marth or Sheik or anything like that. There's a difference between knowing the matchup versus, like, spending the same amount of hours, right? They probably spend 1% of their hours put into DK matchup versus that they do into, like, a Fox or Spacey or Marth, right? So you're comparing, like, that, you know, like that 1% amount of time that they spent playing that matchup to Junebug, who's spending, like, 99% of his time practicing against top tiers. The gap in matchup knowledge is just too great, so he's taking advantage, essentially, of a hole in terms of, like, DK matchup experience in the Melee landscape. Remix King said, thanks for the 2. Junebug gained an advantage, but size is subjective. No, because the size is objective. The size is determined by his change in placements, right? That's how you'd measure the amount of advantage that he gained, right? Is the disadvantage greater or higher? Is the disadvantage greater or higher than the advantage he's gaining? The advantage is obviously higher because he's getting better results. Like, there's no way to spin this that's not, like, I would love to hear a counter argument to what I'm saying. I don't even know what to say, because, like, the take is correct. People are just upset that I'm pointing it out, because it's measurable, right? It's all measurable. It's measurable with results before and after, right? All right, let's keep going. Let's keep going into One Piece, because I feel like if nobody's going to present an argument that's addressing what I'm saying, like, there's nothing to really argue about anymore from here. All right, I'll move on. All right, Remix King, thanks for the 5. It is important for the Strats to do something that helps Luffy achieve his goals for the arc. This continually supports the idea that Luffy needs his crew. It is important for the Strats to do something that helps Luffy achieve his goal for the... Yeah, I think it's been a minute since the Strats have been, like, relevant. Like, they were relevant in Wano, but, like, only at the very... No, they're important in Wano. They've been important in most arcs. I think Egghead was really big. Like, Egghead was a really big gap. The Senate, thanks for the 5. I was watching a Mihawk versus Shanks vid earlier. Do you think Mihawk has advanced conquerors? If not, does that put Zoro much closer to Mihawk? I think Mihawk definitely has advanced conquerors, right? I don't think you could even fight. Like, Mihawk would just lose to Zoro if he didn't have advanced conquerors, right? Like, at this point, Zoro would probably be the stronger swordsman. CBMX, thanks for the 5. Sorry if this has already been covered. How are we feeling about Frankie this arc? Feels like missed potential, RE parallels, and connection to Vegapunk, in my opinion. I didn't have, like, tremendously high expectations for Frankie going into this arc, because I didn't trust that Oda would do anything with him. I think it's kind of shocking that he did, like... Okay, so there's a difference between Frankie not really doing anything this arc, because he did do stuff. He had contributions. He even helped in the Mars scenario, right? He even helped take out Mars. But the difference is that I didn't care as much about Frankie doing tangible things. I cared about him getting some character writing. I feel like him having no character writing, no meaningful character stuff whatsoever this arc, I think that's really, really strange to me personally. I don't know. I don't know. Well, I think people are... Okay, I'm just going to touch on the DK point really quick, because I think people are misunderstanding what my argument is. Oof is saying, are they exploiting? Yes. Is exploiting wrong? No. Imagine telling any general in the past that using your opponent's weakness or lack of preparation isn't allowed. Yeah, I'm not arguing that. I'm not arguing that they're cheating or anything. I'm just saying, like, I'm not super impressed by a player switching to something like a mid-tier or something like that and exploiting matchup knowledge, right? Like, I'm not like, oh my god, Junebug's, like, so amazing or whatever. I'm just like... Okay, he switched to a character that people don't know how to play against, so he's getting, he's getting better results. I'm not hyped over that because people view it as basically like, oh my god, he's succeeding against the odds. Whereas I view it as, no, he already tried doing it the other way, the way that was supposedly an advantage, and then he switched to doing something that gives him an advantage, right? To me, it's not hype. I'm trying to explain why it's not hype to me, right? Why I'm not impressed, right? I'm not impressed because to me it's just gimmicky. It's gimmicky success. Cool, he's doing it. I'm not saying he's cheating or anything like that. That's obviously not cheating. I'm just like, no, but it's not like that makes him an amazing player because we already know what, like, I think low tiers and mid tiers get extra praise for their success, which is what annoys me. When in my mind it's like they're getting extra praise for their success as though they're handicapping themselves, when in reality, looking at the objective reality of the Melee scene, it's not a handicap. They're playing with, to some degree, an advantage of matchup knowledge, right? That's my only point, which is that he's not handicapped. Like, that's the reason people get so hyped when low tiers and mid tiers win, because it's like, oh my god, the underdog is pulling it off, right? The underdog is doing it. The character, the person who's disadvantaged, who has a handicap, is succeeding against all odds. I'm just pointing out the reality that it's like, no, we can use Junebug as a perfect example that switching to something that is worse gains you so much advantage in matchup knowledge that it's not actually, you're not handicapping yourself. You're coming in with a greater advantage is the reality of it. That's why I'm not hyped. I'm like, yeah, he's getting success, But he's also got the one up over each opponent, so he's the one coming in with an advantage each time. He's coming in with the advantage that I'm playing DK, you're playing fucking Spacey, who has no idea what to do against DK or get out of combos or anything like that. So I'm going to win a lot of matchups just based on the fact that I'm choosing to compete in an unorthodox way. Not like, you get what I'm saying? Like, I'm not rooting, like, I just don't like the whole mentality that, like, this player is playing with a handicap and winning, which is hype, because I don't view them as playing with a handicap. I think in reality, they're playing with an advantage. I think the simple fact that you can compare his before and after results is simple proof of that, right? Is playing a top tier an advantage versus DK for Junebug? No. Playing a top tier was not an advantage because he did worse with a top tier. Switching to DK got him better results, therefore he's coming in with some sort of a greater advantage that other players lack. I think that's fairly ABC. I'm just explaining why I'm not hyped about it, why I don't think it's cool. I think a lot of people just view it very basic, which is like, oh my god, character lower on the tier list, but getting good results. He's doing it as an underdog. He's doing it with a disadvantage. He's doing it with a handicap. It's like, no, if you look at it objectively, you can compare before and after. He's not actually an underdog. He seems to have given himself an advantage that he didn't have before. That's all I'm saying. I'm just explaining why I'm not hyped about it. That's all I'm pointing out. And I haven't seen a single argument. I'm not saying he's exploiting something or he's cheating or something. I'm just saying he's not an underdog in this situation. It looks like that if you think about the tier list in like pure black and white, but if you actually look at it in practical real life terms and compare to what he was doing with a higher character on the tier list to what he's doing with a mid-tier character on the tier list, objectively, like provably, demonstrably, measurably true, is that he gained an advantage switching from the top tier to the mid-tier. That's all I'm saying. I'm just explaining why it's not hype, why it's not exciting, because I don't get excited by players winning just because of matchup knowledge. I prefer seeing players like, when I see Cody fight Zayn, I'm like, they played each other, like, they both know this matchup in and out. The better, like, the smarter player is winning. It's not like one person knows tricks, the other person doesn't. That's what I personally prefer. That's what gets me hype. Moving on from this, because I think too many people don't know Melee in here. CBMX, thanks for the 5. Sorry if this has already been covered. How are we feeling about Frankie? No, we covered this. King G, thanks for the 5. Elbaf will be story lore and Zoro hype. Why Zoro hype? It's time for Zoro to level up after mastering Enma. Odal throw Usopp a bone and give him a new slingshot. I think Usopp will get a lot in Elbaf, and you should watch out for my next video that's coming out next Tuesday. I think Usopp's set to get a shit ton in Elbaf. I do think Zoro needs to play the most catch-up at the moment relative to what he needs to become, because Zoro needs to beat Mihawk, and Mihawk is like Yonko level, and I think that Zoro, with his showing against Lucci this last arc, it's just not there. It's just not there. I don't know. Mr. Human says calling the win just a matchup advantage win and discounting the skill is just kind of mean, to be honest. If your argument is that it's mean, then you're not actually discrediting the argument. It's basically explaining that you're just coming from a place of like, well, I don't like what you're saying, not disagreeing with what I'm saying. I never said that it's just matchup knowledge. I'm like, obviously he has to be a really good player, but you take a really good player, right? And then you give him an advantage of other players, which is matchup knowledge, and then he's going to perform a lot better than he used to do when he didn't have that advantage. That's all I'm saying. I'm not trying to discredit the win. I'm explaining why I don't think that is exciting to me. Maybe that's exciting to you. Maybe you think it's exciting to basically win because the other person just doesn't have any idea what to do, whereas, you know, you've studied something that, like, puts you on a, like, that gives you a sort of secret advantage or gives you things to, like, beating the opponent in a way that they don't really know even how they're supposed to interact with you, right? You're not really winning the mental battle. You're using tricks that they have no idea what they're even supposed to deal with, right? That's not cool to me. Oof said, you said objectively worse player and gaining an advantage. Yeah. I mean, no, not objectively worse player. I said he's objectively gaining an advantage because he's objectively doing better than what he used to do, right? If you want to see what he is on an even playing field with other players, see what he did with top tiers, right? His top tiers against other people's top tiers, same matchup knowledge, right? Before he wasn't placing as high. He's like, okay, let me take a step down, but I get a shit ton of matchup knowledge advantage. Now I'm coming in and I'm beating players largely with my same skill level, largely because now they don't know what the fuck to do against me, so they can't engage in a sort of like evenly paced rock, paper, scissors, because they don't even know what the answer is to like rock, paper, scissors in this scenario. It's too foreign to them. Daniel Bochevsky says it's not like this is the first time they played the matchup, though. Yeah, but you understand that top players spend like literal hundreds and hundreds of hours. Like, players have played like Fox Sheik for like thousands and thousands of hours of their life, and they're still learning new things in Fox Sheik. Sure, every player's played against a DK before, but a fraction of the time that they spent playing against the top tiers, right? Melee's meta is so advanced that you need to be put it like, I listen to Mango, who's played against Marth for like decades at this point, and he'll go off, like he'll take like a 6-month break and come back and talk about like how he's got to update his matchup knowledge against Marth, right? That's the type of margins that you're dealing with in terms of matchup knowledge in Melee. Like, the game's been out for so long, but matchups are so ridiculously complex and developed that you need to be keeping up, like spending hundreds of hours month after month just keeping up with each one. Like, they'll fall behind in like their Sheik knowledge even just a little bit if they don't play for like a little bit. Like, if you listen to players' streams, that's what they talk about. So then you take DK, who they've probably put in like 1% of the time, like 1% of their hours lifetime playing against. And it's like, if their matchup knowledge is so minor comparatively to other top tiers like Fox, Marth, Sheik, etc., then they're at a disadvantage when they're playing against a DK who's got the reverse, right? Who knows so much about how to play the Fox, Marth, Sheik matchup because that's all he fucking plays, and he's put the same amount of hours that they have into top tiers. Anyway, moving on. Meek, thanks for the 5. Yo, how'd you like the chapter? Do you think next chapter could be a bounty chapter? Okay, hold on. Meek, are you still in the chat? Is Meek still in the chat? I don't know. Kirby and Hales Jotar says this is just feelings based at this point. That's what I'm reading from chat. I just hear people saying this is mean, I don't like it. And originally you guys were saying it's incorrect. I'm saying it's easily provably correct because you just look at Junebug before and after. It's very cut and dry. There's nothing to debate here. It's cut and dry. You look at A and B. What's better? B. It's the same fucking person, very different results, proves the point. There's nothing to argue, right? If you want to argue this is mean or you don't like what I'm saying, that's fine. I'm just explaining why I don't feel excited about Junebug's success. That's it. All right. Meek, are you still in the chat? Okay. Meek, what's up? What's up? Meek, can I ask, why is what's the chapter... What is the chapter, what do you say? Like, how do I say this? What is the chapter release schedule likely going to look like? Is it generally going to be like, what do you say? Like, is it generally going to be Fridays or Thursdays at this point? Because, like, I don't mind which day it is at the end of the day. I just need to kind of know, ideally. Like, that would be helpful to me. Obviously, you guys have your own schedule. I would just love to know theoretically what it might be. And that might help schedule streams a little better and make things more, consistent for viewers a little bit. Obviously, we're not the important thing in any of this, but, like, I'm just curious. Do you guys kind of know? All right. I feel like I put Meek on the spot. We all like the translation of the chapter. Let me throw that out too. We all like the translation of the chapter. I think this is a really well translated chapter. Also, Meek, do you have any insight on the Shanks line? Any further insight on the Shanks line? Charlie Randall says, where do you get that poster? What if I told you it's an exclusive? It's a nice poster, right? JK Kane says, I don't remember seeing Donkey Kong this chapter. I'm going to try and stay off the Donkey Kong train. I just see I see a lot of feelings-based arguments in the comments, and I'm just like annoyed by that because I'm just like, please challenge this simple question mark of if Junebug got these results with top tiers and then much better results as soon as he switched to a mid-tier, how could you possibly argue that switching to the mid-tier and maining that was not an advantage? Because it's measurable. Same player, different rank, different results over time, right? Only change was switching from one to the other. That inherently proves something, which is the matchup knowledge advantage is greater than the disadvantage of going a few steps down the tier list. It's not really debatable unless you have a counter argument for that, which I haven't seen yet. All right. Tala, thanks for the 279. Sandy stole Frankie and Zoro Zarks. Usopp, be safe, please. I think Usopp's definitely going to get a lot of shine in Elbaf. I think we're set for that. Rage, thanks for the 10. Onward to Elbaf, Morj. Also, do you think we're getting the post-Egghead stuff now, or do you think we're staying on this island with Saturn and the Marines and Emeth? Hey, thank you very much for your first super ever. Really appreciate that. I think that we're sticking on the island for like a moment longer. To finish out the scene, at least, with Saturn. Maybe Kizaru wouldn't be involved. Saturn, Emeth. I think we've closed something out there, so maybe 1 chapter more, maybe 2 if Oda's feeling like something crazy. But I feel like generally it's not going to be much longer. And then beyond that, I feel like we start getting to the post-Egghead stuff. I feel like. I don't know. Okay. Meek says, I didn't write the line as nicely as I could have. Everyone listen up. This is Meek's words. He's the translator of the chapter. The literal translation was 2 phrases. I didn't sense any hostility. Oh, 2 separate phrases. 2, was that Haki stronger / greater than red-haired? Oh, shit. Okay, hold on, everybody. Hold on. Okay, big news. Was that Haki stronger / greater than red-haired? Okay, this settles that. This settles what the actual line is supposed to be, which is actually some insane hype for Shanks because they actually can't tell if Joy Boy's Haki is greater or less than red-haired. I also see one last, this is my closing comment on the DK situation, because I see something from Cheesehead, and I just want to be understood. He's saying, you're seeing feelings-based arguments, and your argument is an opinion that you don't respect people who use mid-tiers. No. Let me be very, very clear, because you're missing 2 separate things. You're missing what the objective argument I'm making is, and then my feelings-based of what I like and dislike. My objective argument is, Junba gained an advantage by switching to DK, which is objectively demonstrated in his results. Results are objective. Switching, played top tiers before, not so great results. Relative to switching to DK, much better results. Meaning, factually, indisputably, undebatably, he gained an advantage switching to a character that people did not have matchup knowledge against. My feelings-based thing is, I don't get hyped by that. I am never going to feel hyped when a player wins when they have an advantage of matchup knowledge, right? That's my personal feeling on that. I understand if other people find it hype when players win based primarily on lack of matchup knowledge. That's not hype to me. You see, one argument is explaining what's happening, the basis of the results, explaining that contrary to popular opinion, he is gaining an advantage with DK. He's not some underdog just because he's playing a mid-tier, because in the reality of the Melee competitive scene, the advantage of gaining matchup knowledge over your opponents is a greater advantage that outweighs the disadvantage of going down a few tiers in the tier list. That's objective, provable based on Junebug's results. Before, after, right? You cannot debate this point. It is reality, whether you like it or not. He gained an advantage, okay? That's the truth. That's objective truth. My feeling is I don't like it. That's why I don't feel hype about it. That's my personal feeling. I don't feel hype when I see players winning because they're relying on gimmicky mid-tiers that people don't know how to play against. I don't like seeing people win based off matchup knowledge. I prefer seeing even playing fields in terms of matchup knowledge, and then the better player wins, in my opinion. That's my feeling. It's separate from the reality of what's happening. Reality is what's happening. My feelings are just me expressing, do I like that or not? You get the difference. That's it. No more DK talk, unless I see something kind of crazy on that topic. All right. Meek says, so I think if I could rephrase that bubble, I'd write it as, was that greater than red hairs? It didn't seem hostile, did it? That's huge Shanks hype. That is insane Shanks hype, because it's actually even crazier than what the spoilers indicated. The spoilers said it might even be greater than Shanks's, which seems to imply that it is greater. This is straight up questioning, was it greater than red hairs? Which means that from what the Giants have seen, that Haki demonstration is comparable to what they've seen from Shanks. That's kind of insane. I think that's kind of insane. I don't know. Goomba Boomba, thanks for the 2. What chances that Oda pulls a Fishman Island pit stop before Elbaf? Pulls a Fishman Island pit stop. I don't know. If it is, I think that it would be like the Blackbeard Pirates trying to swoop in, right? So it would be an outside world thing. I don't know if you mean the Strahds going there, because I don't think the Strahds can, time-wise. Shafi 9000, thanks a lot. I think Kid is going to make a killer comeback. Give me your theory since Shanks is not there at Elbaf. Ideas on how he'll make a comeback. I think that Kid, the comeback would have to start with, one, I think that there's a small possibility of Law and Kid allying once again. I think there's a small possibility of that, just because it's very possible Law is headed to Elbaf. Oda kind of already set up the idea of them allying, teaming up together in Wano. It could be a recurring trend. I think Law and Kid alliance would be really, really cool and interesting. I think it would require a lot of character growth. I think there's things that, like, in terms of Kid moving forward, the biggest tool he has up his sleeve is Conqueror's Haki. So advanced Conqueror's Haki can really, really fucking level you up. Luffy was Yonko first commander level heading into Wano, was likely still about that level even by the time he hit the rooftop. Then he got advanced Conqueror's Haki, and suddenly he was boxing with Kaido. So I think if Kid is to make a comeback, it would be advanced Conqueror's Haki related. Character-wise, he needs to grow in some way. We just have... The crazy thing about Kid is that we've so little for his character so far that I can't even imagine what his character arc is supposed to be. Like, he got his ass handed to him by the red-haired pirates as soon as he came into the New World. He got his ass handed to him by Kaido and the Beast Pirates, like, shortly after. And then he came back to the red-haired pirates and got his ass handed to him again. What is his character arc supposed to be? We know so little about him that it's hard to even understand that. Blackleg, thanks for the 5. I think you're underrating how bad DK is. No top tiers really should be losing to him, regardless of matchup experience. Have you seen his recovery? Dude, I think that if you take a bad character and you give player A, like, 100 hours of matchup knowledge against them, and you give player B, the player of the bad character, 10,000 hours of matchup knowledge against player A's character, I think that makes up for the gap in knowledge. I think this simple... You're saying, have you seen his recovery? Cool. Those are points that you're raising, like, hey, isn't this really bad? And I'm saying, yeah, well, I think that the matchup knowledge outweighs that, right? So these are both of our speculations. Now, the way that we measure whose speculation is correct is the results, right? We can tell that Junebug's results from before when he's playing top tiers to now when he's playing a mid tier improved, meaning that my speculation is correct, which is that the matchup knowledge is a bigger advantage than just dropping, that character's actual movesets and capabilities, right? Like, yes, the character gets worse, but apparently, based on measurable results, the matchup knowledge gained is a greater advantage that outweighs that significantly to the point that Junebug is getting way better results than he ever did before. It's like, I get what you're saying, but we're arguing something that's already been tested and proven in reality, right? Like, you can have a speculation like, I think it's going to rain tomorrow based on XYZ, right? And you can say, well, I think it's going to be sunny tomorrow based on XYZ, and it's cool. We both have points, speculations, right? You see what happens tomorrow. Oh, turns out it rains. Okay, one of us was right. The other one's wrong. That's it. Leo Recto, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 16 months. Good afternoon, Mr. Morj. Do you think One Piece missed the chance to have an iconic final antagonist due to him being introduced and interacting with the MC too late? I think we still get a lot of time with Emu. I think that there's still the possibility that Blackbeard is the final villain. I've gone back and forth on this, especially with recent chapters, like the one showcasing like the potential race for the One Piece. If Blackbeard's the final villain, I will say that he would be a significantly more iconic and memorable and unique final villain than Emu would. I feel like Emu, we need more context on him. Maybe Emu is a really unique final villain, but we've kind of all seen like the evil overlord, king, emperor type villain before, right? Blackbeard is really, really unique. I think Blackbeard fits One Piece in a way that no other villain really can. And I feel like Blackbeard would just stand out from all other manga, anime, like general fiction villains. He feels so different as a villain. The path to him getting stronger, his agenda, his motivations, his personality, it just feels so much more fresh than a character like Emu. So I think Blackbeard will be an iconic villain no matter how you spin it. Whether or not he's the final villain, it remains to be seen. Lucky Man, thanks for being a Pirate King tier member for 11 months. Hey Morj, how would you rank your content in terms of your enjoyment making them? Oh, this is a fun video. Thank you very much, fun question. Thank you very much, Lucky Man. Tuesday video, chapter review / stream, Monday stream, weekly, monthly podcast. Personally, I like Friday podcast the most. Okay, so that is a great question. I think in a vacuum, in an absolute vacuum, I think I would enjoy the Pirate King podcast the most. Because the Pirate King podcast, I just get, like, I talk about One Piece all the time. Pirate King podcast allows me to mix that up and talk about a lot of other things, right? At length. On stream, for example, if I talk about, like, the DK stuff too long, like Melee stuff, people get upset with that, right? Pirate King podcast, I feel like I have more leeway to talk about the things that are outside of One Piece just at length, right? So that's in a vacuum. However, at the same time, the Pirate King podcast, just the way it goes, because it's an hour and a half long, usually, and it's not part of my usual schedule because it's monthly, so I have to find a place to fit it in to do it. So sometimes I'm doing the Pirate King podcast at times where it doesn't feel like a leisurely thing, but it's like, okay, I have to like move things around in my schedule to be able to do this. But in a vacuum, that's the thing that I have the most fun doing, right? Beyond that, I think I really like doing streams. Streams are always really fun for me. Doing the Tuesday video is fun is like a difficult word. I have the most fun writing it, and like I have the most fun seeing like the finished product of it because it's the thing that I put the most time and effort into. There's a lot of nitty gritty things that go into the Tuesday video, like me figuring out all the images that are going to fill it out line by line. I have to figure that out. Recording it, which I often have to do very late at night because it just takes so long to write it. The review process, all of the nitty gritty things make the Tuesday video in the end not that fun, but it's the most satisfying to complete, if that makes sense, and I take the most pride in that. Yeah, I think that's chapter review I'd put at the bottom of my most fun things to do because I just feel like, I think when I'm doing a chapter review, I feel like this is not to sound, how do I say this? When I'm doing a chapter review, I feel like I'm doing the type of content that that like any other One Piece YouTuber can do, if that makes sense. I think there's so many One Piece YouTubers who are fantastic and do lots of different really fantastic things, many things much better than I can do, right? I think lots of One Piece YouTubers have their own areas of specialties and things that they do really, really well. Everybody's channel is unique, right? I think when I'm doing the chapter review, I feel like I'm doing something that's basically something that everybody just does, and it's not as unique to me, if that makes sense. But I still like getting my thoughts out on the chapter in a more concise format. I have to shorten it, so it's not as, shorten it, and it's not as personality-based as when I talk about it in streams or even in the weekly podcast, like the Yonko podcast. And I feel like, yeah, chapter review, I feel like it's the type of content that I'm doing that it doesn't feel as unique to me, if that makes sense. I really like doing my Tuesday videos because the final product I feel is something that's unique to me. And, you might prefer other One Piece YouTubers' videos, the type of stuff that they do, but at the very least, I can say that the type of content I'm putting out every Tuesday, you will only find that type of content on my channel. So, that's why chapter reviews I don't have as much fun doing because I just don't feel like as I think I communicated that basically. That's pretty much it. Uwu, thanks for the 5. UFO book comes out next Tuesday. 2 documentaries next, and then Prominent People. Ex-presidents confirm it's real. It's here, fellas. Okay, Uwu is still pushing us on the UFO train. All right. Kyle D. Swaglypuff, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 10 months. Shanks obviously strong as fuck, but I don't know if comparing hockey in a Slipknot versus the actual person standing in front of you. Also, Swaglypuff, the Smash Goat. Yeah, maybe you are the Smash Goat. I don't know. Yeah, okay, so like maybe Joy Boy's full hockey is, way stronger than what he did with the knot. That's totally possible too. But then I think the simple fact that Shanks' hockey, the Giants think it's comparable to, like, regardless, it doesn't even have to be about comparing Shanks' hockey to Joy Boy then. If we just use the knot as the example, right? The knot in itself, the hockey that was released there, it's still by far, not even close, the strongest hockey we've ever seen in the story, right? By far. There's not really a close second, right? Sent like 4 fucking Gorosei home, right? Knocked out an entire Buster Call worth of characters, right? From a distance, right? It was just insane, flooded the entire island, right? So sure, maybe Joy Boy like himself could do something even crazier than that in person, but the simple fact is that the knot that we saw, that's already the standard for the highest Haki we've ever seen. So if the Giants were saying that Shanks can do that, or it comparable to that, that in itself still would make it the strongest Haki that we've seen in the story, right? Maybe maybe Joy Boy in person is even higher than that, sure, but at the very least, it would put Shanks' Haki well above anything that we've seen on page in One Piece from any character, right? So it's still very impressive. Fohum, thanks for the 5. Hi, Morj. I'm not sure if it's been said before, but I wrote my assumption on Vegapunk's reasoning for not revealing on Patreon to check out. All right, I will check it out, man. Are you a Pirate King member there? If you're a Pirate King member, then maybe we'll make it on to Voice of the People. And thank you for your first super ever. Thank you. If it's a good point, then like that'll probably be the Voice of the People that I do, because that's my biggest gripe with the chapter, I suppose. Sam Reed, thanks for the 5. I'm sorry for being annoying here, but you haven't reacted to my super chats before. Wait, what? You sent one before? I'm sorry, man. I didn't. Sorry, I missed it. Maybe it's because I was so wrapped up in DK stuff. Which Sam Reed. Let's see. Sam Reed. I'm so sorry, man. You donated 10 before. Holy shit. What the fuck? Wait, have I missed this before already? I'm sorry, man. I'm really, really sorry. I don't know how that happened. Wait, no, I'm missing a few supers right here. Hold on. I'm missing several supers. Hold on. I missed a run of things. I'm sorry, guys. I'm very sorry. Okay. Let me catch up on this. Meek, thanks for the 5. I'm starting with Meek. I'll just go in order. Yo, how'd you like the chapter? Do you think next chapter could be a bounty chapter? I think next chapter would be a bit quick for a bounty chapter, but I imagine we'll get it very soon, if it happens at all. It's just that most of the Strahds didn't do anything, so I imagine not a lot of bounty raises, and Luffy's already so far ahead of the rest of the pack, it would feel kind of strange to me, I guess. I did like the chapter a lot. Eric JD, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 10 months. Sup, Morj. Next chapter, I predict we will all see Kizaru sulking around a hookah lounge where he will be approached and recruited by Blackbeard. I don't see Kizaru. I think we're still some steps away maybe from Kizaru leaving the Marines permanently. Maybe it happens soon. But I don't see him just jumping to joining Blackbeard, you know? A hookah lounge is a funny possibility, though. Sam Reed, thanks for the 5. I think your comment didn't come through this first time around, but I see another comment from you shortly after. Joao Porto, thanks a lot for the 10. It bothers me that Vegapunk never explicitly said that the world government was behind everything. He had all the reason to, and it would make his speech way more impactful. That's something I've talked a lot about throughout the stream. I feel like he missed the total most important point of the stream, which was trying to actually help the people of the world. He told them that they're going to be drowned soon due to an ancient weapon, but he neglected to say that he believes the ancient weapon is from the world government. You could say that he didn't want to offer speculation. I do feel like this chapter establishes that he was very, very confident in it and was putting together all the evidence to confirm it was the world government in his mind. And to be fair, if he wanted to confirm it, he could have just made York tell him, right? Instead, he said York is irrelevant, even though York is the source of truth to a very, very important question to solve, right? So I agree with you there. Scrump, thanks for the 5. Maybe the reason he didn't send out the message as soon as possible is that he's planning to do a mind switch with York and trap her in the brain. Oh, shit, that'd be kind of crazy. I think that's... The York aspect of all this still needs to be resolved, but I don't know if that's actually the case. I think that's a cool possibility, but I don't know if it would happen. Plus 420 in block, thanks for the 5. The planet Jupiter protects Earth by acting as a gravitational vacuum and deflecting asteroids. Jupiter's primary attack is a vacuum. Coincidence? And this is your first super ever, so thank you very much. I think that might be a coincidence just because, like, there's so many One Piece characters with names and abilities and stuff. Like, I don't know if that is actually going to be the case. I think it might be a coincidence, but it's an interesting idea at the very least. Sam Reed, thank you for the 10. I'll do it again, as I don't mind. I've had countless hours of content from you, but don't you think that the smartest man has such a simple flaw makes... sense / is effective? I think if it was like a flaw that was pointed out, like I think the character flaw that was pointed out here was like him just not recognizing human nature to some degree. So I like the idea that like he didn't recognize that if he extracted his own greed from him, that it would result in these ramifications, right? Because that's like, he's really smart in terms of logic and science and technology, but maybe not in terms of human nature. And I think that that is fitting. And I think that that came through this chapter. I think something like just straight up not telling the world that that the world government is behind it, or just deciding that York is irrelevant in terms of finding out the truth of who's behind it. I think those things are just like damningly stupid mistakes, and those go more to just like basic logical thinking that like a 5-year-old would probably realize. Like if you told a 5-year-old like, hey, we're all gonna like, that guy over there is gonna like blow up this blow up this building or something, then the 5-year-old would probably run and tell people, hey, that guy over there is gonna blow up this building, right? Like that's like, that doesn't require intelligence. You just tell people, right? The fact that Vegapunk neglected to say that guy, he just said the building's gonna get blown up. That's not even like a. It's not even like a. I just don't even know. Like that's just a basic thing. Like he did a fucking 15-minute speech, right? And why wouldn't you just say that guy is going to blow up the building? Why would you just leave it at the building is going to be blown up and then a whole bunch of unrelated nonsense? That's not even like a character flaw type thing. It's just nonsensical at that point. Like it doesn't really go to that anymore, I don't think. All right. Moving on. I think we're caught up. Got Sam Reed. Oh, no. The Senate, thanks for the 2. Shaka's death and the others could have been prevented. Shaka's death, I don't know. Like, they basically concluded that we're going to die anyway. The world government will catch us no matter what. I think that's kind of flawed because it's like, it's straight up inaccurate because Lilith got away, which means that they all could theoretically have gone away if they actually planned for it. Like, a large part of the reason that they just died back to back to back is because they were so fucking... they didn't know all of this was surprise. Like, they didn't know any of this was happening. They didn't even know that there was a traitor. So it's kind of like, if they'd known, like, if they just kept their knowledge that there is a traitor or whatever, they very well could have... I think if they just chosen to take action, right, and not just accept that we're going to die no matter what, because the premise that we're going to die no matter what, it is incorrect, is, again, Lilith survives, right? So... and I think a lot of the reasons that they were so many of them were picked off over the course of this arc was because they didn't know anything that was happening because they'd erased their own memories. I think there's a huge difference between, like, if they keep their memories and actually try and prepare for it and actually try and survive, I think there's a good chance that they do survive. But I don't have as much issue with that because it's like, that's like something that, it's like we know after the fact that, yeah, they probably would have been able to survive if they just planned a bit better. I mean, every single fucking Straw Hat survived, you know what I mean? And like, it's not like, it's really, really fucking unlucky, actually, that every Vegapunk fucking died, you know? Because the world government's trying to kill all the Straw Hats too, and all of them just happen to survive. So it's like, it's really fucking unlucky that, like, out of... you got, like, 50 Giants this arc, Dory, Broggy, all the Straw Hats, and then like 5 Vegapunks, right? And you know, the world government is trying to kill all of them, and then the only characters that die are the 5 Vegapunks. It's like, statistically, you had a really good shot at surviving. Maybe you would have survived if you just, like, it was actually the opposite of plot armor, right? It was like aggressive anti-plot armor that got them all killed. So I feel like statistically, I don't know. I think that in retrospect, they had a very good shot at surviving if they just, like, actually tried to plan and prepare a way to exit. I don't know. That's my thought. Jolly D Joestar, thanks for the 2. What makes Ultimate different from Melee? That is like a essay all in and of itself, but I think the simplest way to say it, I think the very, very simplest way to say it, and this is biased because it's from a Melee perspective, the few things that Melee has that I personally really, really prefer over Ultimate are much better movement options. Everybody already knows that. Much better movement options, so everything's much more fluid. You got a lot more capability in terms of choosing how your character shifts from A to B, etc. So there's that. Then in terms of the combo game on both ends, Melee uses a lot more... There's a lot more depth to how hitboxes are used, how momentum is used, things like that. And then there's a lot more depth to how players can react in terms of their DI, smash DI, etc. So it means that like the difference between light hits versus direct hits versus like what part of the hitbox is touching, etc. There's so much more that you can shift around in terms of melee. So like the combo tree becomes a lot more infinite. It's not literally infinite, but the combo tree just gets like option after option after option, basically. So, and then the player's defensive options just keep increasing. So there's lots and lots of hidden tech that honestly keeps getting developed or implemented or figured out as time goes on, which means that melee just keeps being endlessly dynamic in terms of what's happening. Combine that with the fact that there's more movement options, which can then play into your combo options or your defensive options. That affects, you know, just the variety of what happens a lot more. Ultimate is kind of built in a way where like there's a lot of combos that are almost pre-planned for characters to be able to do, if that makes sense. But there's not going to be as much variety, generally speaking, in terms of the combo trees that you're going to see or the defensive options that you're going to see, right? Those are probably the biggest differences straight up. There's other things that come into it, like, you know, edge guarding. I think matchups are a big thing, because I think one thing I'll definitely say is cool about Ultimate is that all the characters are viable. The balance is way better, right? You do need to know a lot more matchups. Melee, it's a little different in that there's a lot fewer matchups, but the game kind of works well with that because there's so much, like, because you have so many options in terms of neutral, in terms of defensive options, combo options, etc. Because there's so many options and like advancements keep being made and like new interactions keep getting taught out and labbed and everything like that, it would be almost too much if like every character in Melee was a top tier. If like every character in Melee was viable, because it's just too much matchup knowledge to learn. So Melee is like, think more concentrated character cast with, I would argue personally, a lot more depth to the gameplay between the roster of characters that it has, whereas Ultimate has a lot more variety, a lot more overall balance. I think it's much more accessible at an early stage because like even short hop attacks, right? Those are pre-programmed in Ultimate. Like there's like buttons that you can do to automatically be able to do short hop attacks and things like that, right? So yeah, Ultimate's more accessible. Like I think those are the big differences in my opinion between Melee and Ultimate. But if you really wanted to get into all of it, there's just so much. Like there's probably video essays worth of it out there. Joseph eBay, thanks for being a Yonko Tier member for 7 months. Yo, Morj, how goes it? Nothing to say, really, just checking in. Thanks a lot, Joseph eBay. I appreciate it. Appreciate the long-term support as well. The Senate, thanks for the 2. You should do a One Piece Burning Blood tourney with stream. I don't know what that is. Is that a fighting game thing? I don't know. Remix King, thanks for the 2. Junebugs gains an advantage, but size is subjective. I argue that I don't know why people keep saying that, because I argue that the size is objectively measurable. The way you measure it is in results, right? Results before and after, right? I think that's usually how people do it. I think people are just uncertain about it because it's it's a mid-tier character, so the basic surface level logic is like, oh, went down in the tier list means disadvantage, right? But you look at the results to determine how much of an advantage you're actually gaining. I think that's pretty straightforward. I think it's the same as like saying, you know, like when Armada picked up Fox, right? He kept getting second place with Sheik the year before. Then he picks up Fox, right? Turns out that being a Fox and Peach dual main, based on the results, is superior to just being a Peach main. Like that's how you measure everything in general, right? If a player is doing one thing and then they start implementing something else, and then you measure how helpful that implementation is by results. I don't know why. I think to me that's part of it. Like once it's a low tier or mid tier, like all logic goes out the window. So it's like, no, it just must be a disadvantage. When it's like, no, why are you throwing out your previous logic out the window? Like most would say, hey, Armada doing Fox Peach, that turned out to be an advantage for him because he got better results afterwards, right? Turns out to be an advantage based on if it works or not. What, like, turns out being a Fox Peach main is better than just being a Peach main, right? That's not that like we use that logic for everything else. Ice climbers and wobbling. It's like, hey, if ice climbers are normally performing here when they have wobbling, and you take wobbling away from them, and they drop their results to here, right? Then you say, based on the results, wobbling provided them about this much of an advantage. It's all logic based, right? This is how we generally think about things and how all general melee game based discussions go. For some reason, because it's a mid tier, logic is being thrown out the window, and it's like, wait, even though Junebug switched from top tier to mid tier, and that switch gained him this significant advantage in results, we're all going to put on our stupid hats and claim that he somehow handicapped himself, but then just did way better than before via magic. No. Use the same logic you would use in any other scenario. This means that the advantage, that he actually gained an advantage from switching to DK, because the matchup knowledge turns out to counterbalance the fact that it's a lower tier character. It's like, why are we putting on, like, why are we throwing out the same thinking that you would use for anything else? It's not, like, I'm not saying anything crazy here. I'm just saying this is what we think, this is how we think about everything, right? This is how you think about everything. This is how you measure things. This is just measurable, observable. It's not hypothetical, it's measurable. Anyway, moving on. Black Lightning, thanks for the 2. How would Zoro be the world's strongest swordsman if Shanks is still there? We gotta wait and see how Shanks fights. The interesting thing to me about this huge Conqueror's Haki release effect is that it didn't even involve any sort of attack, right? He was able to do this with just straight up Conqueror's Haki being released, right? With just Conqueror's Haki being released, he was able to basically beat 4 Gorosei, like negate their devil fruits, overwhelm them, etc., right? It doesn't involve a sword, it doesn't involve anything. So is it possible that Shanks can do significant attacks with Conqueror's Haki without using a sword? If he did, then that would mean that there's some stuff he can do that is not relevant to the world's strongest swordsman debate, right? J.K. Kane says, I don't remember seeing Donkey Kong this chapter. All right. Yeah, now we're caught up to where we were before. Catching up to what came after this. Leo Recto, thanks for being a Yonko tier member for 16 months, man. Good afternoon, Mr. Morj. Do you think One Piece missed the chance to have an icon? No, we covered this. Covered this. Covered Uwu. Covered. Okay, we're almost here. And I'm sorry, Sam Reed. I'm really sorry about that. Really sorry about that. Abyssal Leviathan, thanks for the 5. If this is the last chapter, what are your thoughts on the arc as a whole? I'm still wondering what happened to Lucci. Let's give it another chapter just to see how things like wrap up. Maybe there's some significant thematic implications or something by what happens next chapter. But I need to reread the arc. I think Egghead needs a bit of a reread for me, and then I can kind of share my thoughts. Because I think the highs and the things I really liked are my favorite things post-time skip. Then there's aspects of it where I feel like it dragged, and I need to reread the climax to see how I feel about the climax as a whole. Because the climax is one of the strangest, most different types of climaxes we've ever had in One Piece. It's non-traditional for sure. Vinny, thanks a lot. You should do shorts from stream moments. That is an interesting idea. I like that. That's an interesting idea. Maybe I could do that. King G, thanks for the 5. Giants saw it from a distance. They didn't feel it, so they can only compare it to Shanks, the strongest user they know. Mihawk greater than Shanks. I don't know, man. Don't really know what to say about that. They didn't feel it, so they can only compare it to Shanks, the strongest user they know. All I can say is I feel like if you're seeing what Luffy, like, how do I say this? To me, it's like, are you ignoring, like, everything that's happening here, right? You have to understand, like, it's an author writing these things and writing these lines of dialogue with a purpose, right? So to me, it's like, what you're saying basically means that Oda wrote, do you get what I'm saying? It's like, if this was real world logic, like, and like I'm talking to somebody and I'm like, oh, that, I don't know, explosion or something, that might have been as big as the explosion that I saw the other day or something, like shitty example. Or if I'm watching lightning in the sky and I'm like talking to my friend, I'm like, oh, that lightning might be as intense as the thunderstorm that happened 2 weeks ago or something. You get what I'm saying? Yeah, that's like real people talking or whatever. But everything in this is choices that an author is making and choosing to write, right? The same way that Oda's saying, like, the Marines are writing it, like, he has the Marines say Mihawk's sword skill is even greater than Shanks's, right? You could argue, well, the Marines never fought Shanks and Mihawk. They didn't fight both of them, so how do we know that the Marines know whose sword skill is better? So, like, you can always come up with something, but at the end of the day, it's like, no, this is the author's intent. The author's choosing to write in this line to communicate something to the viewer, right? Unless the author is trying to actively write in something in a way that, like, you're supposed to understand that this is coming from, like, you're supposed to understand that it's, like, an inaccurate assumption that characters are making. Like, characters saying, like, Robin's a demon child that blew up civilians or something like that, right? Or, like, that killed, like, took out battleships or something, right? Like, there's times that you understand that the author's writing something in specifically for us to understand that it's actually a misconception or a false assumption by characters, right? Unless the author's writing that, and that's clear from the context of the scene, generally speaking, when the author feeds us bits of information, the understanding is basically, yeah, the author is trying to communicate something, right? Like, Oda chose to write in the line, Mihawk's sword skill is even greater than Shanks's, right? Is the author gonna, like, is Oda gonna do the whole, like, like, cross-examination of, like, how do you know, like, put these characters on the firing squad, be like, you, Marine number 4, how do you know that Mihawk's sword skill is greater than Shanks? Did you see it? Did you observe it? First-hand information, second-hand information, etc., etc. No, it's like the author's writing this in. If the author is having Dorian Broggy make this statement that, like, whoa, that was a crazy amount of hockey, we don't know if that was greater than red hairs or not. That is the author. Like, you got to take it out of your mind that it's like, oh, Dorian Broggy are real people. They're not real people. It's the author trying to use characters that have both observed who have both observed Joy Boy's hockey and Shanks's hockey. They're the only characters who have observed both, and using them to make a sort of point, which is, hey, we the reader are supposed to understand that there's a question mark as to how strong Shanks's hockey is compared to Joy Boy's, and it's probably at least in the same ballpark, right? It's author's intent. The author is choosing, like, Oda can only do so much. He can only have, like he's taking the only characters, right, that have seen Shanks's hockey and Joy Boy's hockey, the only characters, Dorian Broggy, as far as we can tell, or random, like, fodder giant, which you would probably disregard even more, but he's taking the only characters you can possibly use to make a point of comparison and using them to make a point of comparison, right? I don't think he's writing that line in and being like, I'm going to have Dorian Broggy say this, but I secretly want the reader to understand that Joy Boy's is way stronger and this line actually just doesn't mean anything and I'm just writing this line for no reason, right? Do you understand? Like, do you think Oda's writing that line and being like, I'm writing this, but it's actually total BS, and I don't want the readers to think at all that Joy Boy and Shanks' hockey is comparable? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, this is a person choosing to write these words and put it into the mouths of characters that can reasonably be expected to, like, the only characters that can even make a comparison, and he's choosing to have them make a comparison, right? You say, well, they were too far away. It's like, okay, well then was Oda supposed to make it so that Dorian Broggy, for some reason, they were still physically stranded on the island or something like that? And then after the hockey incident occurred, then the crew goes back specifically to pick up Dorian Broggy, and then they say, wow, that hockey was this, like, was that greater than red hairs or not? Is that, like, do you think that Oda's going to do all of those hoops just to have them make that point of comparison? Or do you think that maybe he's making them make that point of comparison because Oda wants the reader to understand that there's a point of comparison to be made? Do you get what I'm saying? Like, it's there's a person writing this and making these choices and trying to make the reader think about certain things, right? And that doesn't have anything to do with Shanks versus Mihawk, by the way, because I think that was your comment, Mihawk greater than Shanks. Like, Mihawk might still be stronger than Shanks, right? Maybe, like, because if Shanks exclusively fights with a sword or whatever, I don't know, like, then Mihawk beats him. I think it is interesting that we saw from this that you can just release tremendous amounts of hockey just straight up without any sword or anything involved, and that's an attack in and of itself. But I feel like if you're coming in with the agenda that Mihawk has to be stronger than Shanks, then that can cause you to disregard certain statements while probably not putting the same amount of scrutiny on other statements, like the Marines talking about Mihawk's sword skill being greater than Shanks, right? I take it as both statements being the author communicating something, right? I take it as, like, I'm not going to cross-examine those Marines who said Mihawk's sword skill is greater than Shanks. I'm like, okay, this is something that Oda is writing into a story for the reader to kind of understand, right? I take the same thing here. Joy Boy or Shanks' hockey, who is greater? I take that as Oda basically posing that question to the reader. All right, guys, moving on. Um, Justin Holland, thanks for the 5. This chapter helps emphasize the need for a Straw Hat lookout. I'm going to assume lookout. You said looky. I'm going to assume lookout. I don't think Carrot's happening, man. I think Bonnie is basically the cabin girl, cabin boy, cabin girl of the crew, right? Apprentice, whatever it may be. Bonnie is that. I think that beyond Bonnie, you have, what do you call? Beyond Bonnie, we have Lilith joining as a scientist, maybe. I think that's a stretch. But, that's a possibility. The Senate says, Morj missed 2 of my super chats. I think I got them both. I'm sorry about that, man. I did skip a whole section of supers by accident. I did go back and read them. I'm sorry you had to donate again to say that, but I think I got them. If I didn't, just comment again. Don't super, just comment again, and I will go do another look through to make sure I got them. But I did think I got them. Red Violet, thanks for the 5, and thanks for your first super ever. Consider this line from the DK rap. He's the leader of the bunch. You know him well. This implies that we're all familiar with the DK matchup. That is probably the best argument I've heard so far. For whom? Thanks for the 2. I'm a Pirate King member, and it's only a guess. Okay, cool. All right, I guess we'll see. Blake Finley, thanks for your first super ever. Message retracted. I don't know what you said, but I appreciate it. Rage, thanks for the 5. Morj, question. Do you think Roger went to Elbaf in the past, and can you see Joyboy visiting the Sky People back in the Void Century? Shit. Did Joyboy go to Elbaf, or Roger go to Elbaf in the past? Maybe. Because it's one of the most important locations, right? And a lot of people think that Elbaf has the last road poneglyph. Although one poneglyph seems to have been moved from Fishman Island, if I recall. I forget exactly. I feel like Elbaf is too important of a location for Roger to have not gone to, Joyboy visiting the Sky People. Yes, I do think that's very, very, very possible. I think Joyboy visiting the Sky People is very, very possible. I think Joyboy probably, had some sort of connection to, the vast majority of the races in the world, Maybe they even saw him as Nika for a bit. Akash Panda, thanks for the 2. Will you still react to One Piece Gulag given what happened? One Piece Gulag. I can react next stream, but not this stream. Any stream where I'm doing reactions, if we have time, I can do things like react to Pokemon Adventures, One Piece Gulag. Yeah. Why are we scaling Bonnie and Carrot and stuff? I think Bonnie's strength is probably pretty high because she can basically low diff Vice Admirals, right? I feel like she's still below Jinbei, but I feel like you stack her up against Frankie and Robin, I think that there's something there. Are there any supers that I'm still missing? Pumpkin Flop, thanks a lot. What are your top 5 arcs? Not thanks for anything. Sorry, I'm in auto, whatever mode. What are your top 5 arcs, and is Egghead one of them? So Egghead is yet to be placed. There was a moment in time I was like, this is top 5 for sure. I need to reread because the climax is complicated. I think it's tricky because a lot of things hinge on other things, right? Egghead had my favorite character story writing ever, which is Kuma. At the same time, Kuma, a lot of the potential of that, it has potential for a lot of the weight of that to be undone. Not the entire story. The entire story is still very going to be strong, but the ending is, I think a lot of it hinges on the ending of Kuma's storyline for me. So retroactively, I could feel very differently about Kuma's writing here, okay? So there's that. It had a ton of hype stuff for Outside World stuff. I felt like the climax was really exciting for the most part with the Gorosei stuff, but then at the same time, I feel like in a way it feels like it ended a bit abruptly in a way. I feel like the tone was kind of strange and up and down for a lot of the climax. I feel like Vegapunk's speech, it's complicated because I genuinely enjoyed a lot of Vegapunk's speech for the way that it kind of made the whole world stand still. I'm frustrated by the sort of convenient plot choices to, for no reason, make Vegapunk omit the most important or make certain decisions that kind of defeat a lot of the purpose of the speech. There's a lot of things I love about Egghead and a lot of things I'm a little unsure about. I think I need to reread it from start to finish to really get the full feel of it. Egghead, if you recall, is also an arc that probably had the most breaks of any One Piece arc ever, I would imagine. So I think more than any arc, I need to reread it to really get the full flow. Because very often we'd get like one chapter break, 2 chapters break. So a sense of momentum and flow was very stuttery and stilted for a lot of it. So I don't know. I think if my top 5 arcs right now, without rating Egghead, right? We don't know where Egghead was gonna land yet. It could still be top 5. I gotta wait and reread. My top 5 arcs right now at the top, Enies Lobby, which I count as the same storyline as Water 7. Water 7, Enies Lobby, that's number 1. Marineford, that's number 2. Alabasta, number 3. Arlong Park 4. Probably Saboti 5. Saboti or Impo... I think Saboti 5. Oh, Akash Panda's asking, I was referring to the copyright you got from reacting to a YouTube video. So that was a Netflix anime video, right? I don't know if I'd get a copyright strike for reacting to somebody else's video, but it was like people were saying it's just YouTube. I think I mentioned, maybe I didn't voice enough, but I was like, it's also Netflix, so it might be a little different. I don't know. How do people feel about? Let me get a poll. How do you rate Egghead? 10 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10, or... And then I'm going to ask if people have it in their top 5, top 3, top 1, etc. It looks like a lot of people have it at like a 9. I think if I were to rate it, I would probably also go with a 9 at this moment in time. And the arcs that I have in my top 5, I personally feel are like 10 out of 10s. Maybe, no, because, I mean, Arlong Park is arguably too simple to be a 10 out of 10. Like, it's too basic, but I just feel like the storytelling is so clean throughout it. Maybe Arlong Park's like a 9 out of 10. I don't know. I don't know if I don't think every arc in my top 5 is. I think the 2 arcs that I have as a 10 out of 10 for sure are Enies Lobby and Marineford. For me, those 2 are definite 10 out of 10s in my book. And then everything after that, it's like at least a 9 out of 10. I think I've got Egghead probably at a 9 out of 10 right now. So whether it makes my top 5, it arguably does. I don't know. And let me do a poll of like how people kind of place it. How do you place Egghead? The top, what are the tiers? Top 1? I don't know if Egghead's anybody's favorite arc. Maybe it's some people's favorite arc. You never know. Top 5. Top 10. Not top 10. Outside top 10. Yeah, I don't think there's a point in doing like top 20 or whatever. I don't know how many people even have their top 20 off the bat in their mind. 20 is so many arcs, you know? Bismuth says, I think Impel Down is also 10 out of 10. Yeah, I would agree. It's like Impel Down, I think how to explain this? Some arcs are like, so like Saboti, Arlong Park, Impel Down, I view those as basically perfect arcs in my mind. Like, I don't really have flaws in my mind for them. I think they're essentially perfect arcs, but it feels kind of weird for me rating them the same as like Enies Lobby and Marineford, which are like so much grander and do so much more, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Because like you can have a perfect arc, like a flawless arc, if that makes sense. It does everything well, but it's also very short and simple and basic. Whereas Enies Lobby and Marineford, it's so much grander, so much bigger. It draws me in more. It feels more emotionally affecting, right? So it's not just about an arc not having flaws or doing everything well. Part of me is like, okay, but does it have that extra oomph that puts it at like 10 out of 10 for me? I mean, I could be stupid and not stupid, but I could be like that person and be like, okay, Arlong Park is a 10, Impel Down's a 10, Saboti's a 10, but Enies Lobby's like an 11 because it's got that extra oomph. Marineford's an 11 because it has that extra oomph. Does that make sense? I don't really like doing that. So I kind of like giving out 10s. I don't really have a clear rating for every arc. Also, I think I would definitely rate Alabasta like a lot. Like from a writing perspective, I would put Alabasta at a 9, right? Because I think it has certain clear issues, like Pell being the big one. I would put Alabasta at like a 9, but at the same time, I like Alabasta better than an Arlong Park, even though Arlong Park I think is pretty much close to like the storytelling is pretty much, there's nothing to pick at about it because Alabasta just does more and feels more grand and more epic, you know? Umair, thanks for the 2. Thoughts on Kizaru character arc? Fumble, really sad. I mean, not if it's like if it's heading towards something. I know a lot of people really like Dressrosa. I'm not huge on Dressrosa. I like Dressrosa, and I don't know. I'm not huge on Dressrosa. So a lot of people have Egghead in their top 5. Yeah, I could definitely see that. I gotta reread, see if it makes my top 5. I think it's definitely gonna be in my top 10. Whether it's top 5, I don't know. Keep in mind, One Piece has so many good arcs, it's just like hard to say. Pumpkin Flop says, I hope One Piece remake kills Pell. I don't think so. I do think that the live action might kill Pell. Platinum Fox with a great point. Something philosophical, I'd almost say. You can have a perfect night out on a yacht, but also by a fire pit. Both are perfect nights. Yeah. Okay, I'm probably going to call the stream in the next 5 minutes, if that's good. Chris Morales says, do you rate arcs higher knowing stuff in hindsight? I think I generally, how to explain? This is a One Piece exclusive thing, by the way, because it never happens for any other series. I think that says a lot. But for me, things can be affected by retroactively what happens, but not improved. Does that make sense? Because this is feelings based, not logic based, right? Because that's how this one's subjective, right? For me, even though Skypiea is a lot cooler with the knowledge I now have of with the knowledge I now have of like Nika, all of the lore implications, right? Even though Skypiea is cooler, I still feel like when I read it, my emotions remain the same for the most. Like, it doesn't change my actual enjoyment of the plot of the arc itself, mostly, right? And I don't think it retroactively improves the writing to find out that, you know, the bonfire scene is actually something really symbolic down the line. Because when you're reading the arc itself raw, I feel like that doesn't, like in a vacuum reading that arc, it doesn't really matter to me. At the same time, I feel like something like Saul's death being undone, or Kuma's consciousness actually being a temporary thing or something, that would affect me and my, like, I think it can hurt my view of those arcs in retrospect, simply because I can't get it out of my head when I'm reading those arcs that the tragedy that I'm being sold on is not actually a tragedy. That fundamentally changes my view of it, and I can kind of feel the lie, you know? Like, how to explain? You can apply it within the context of an arc itself, right? So Pell's death, like, if Alabasta ended and we weren't shown that Pell survived or anything like that, I would view that, like, I would maybe consider Alabasta a perfect arc, and I would love that Pell scene. But because when I'm reading Alabasta, I know that Pell survives, that entire scene really, really sucks to read to me. It's impossible to get out of my head, and I know that the author is feeding us a lie. It's weird to say, but, like, my opinion of arcs changing retroactively, it's something that only happens in One Piece because One Piece has this recurring, you know, what I view as an issue personally, right? That's basically it. I don't think that there's any point in, like, other series that I'm like, oh, this arc, I'm loving it in the moment, but it sucks knowing that this is actually the case or that's actually the case. That's it. Akash Panis is Morj. She rates Zoe lower because of Wano. I don't know. Zoe's hard. I feel like Zoe in isolation, it's like another really perfectly enjoyable little arc. And I love Raizo Dono is safe. That's still one of my favorite like One Piece moments. Period. I don't know if I rated low or not. I do think like a lot of the things I was really excited about in Zoe, I ended up not feeling as exciting later on. So I think it doesn't affect like my objective view of like how I like if I pretended to be a critic or something, how I would rate Zoe. But it affects probably how much I personally like it. Whereas something like, you know, Kuma dying or not dying, Kuma's consciousness coming back or not coming back, depending on how that goes, that would affect my like critical view of the arc as well as my personal feelings of the arc. Buggy being Jorbo's descendant, suggests Blake Finley. I don't know about that, man. I don't know. Ender Anami says Whole Cake Island cliffhanger amounting to nothing, to literally nothing, definitely soured me on the arc lol. Yeah, I would agree. When stuff like that happens, you know? Rob says, personally, knowing whether someone dies or not doesn't change how I feel. The character itself is still making the sacrifice and they don't know what's going to happen. Again, to me, by that logic, it's like if that were. I feel like that's some. Like, I can't argue how you might feel about those things, but I feel like if that was true for everyone, like if that's a true principle in writing in general, then there's literally never, ever, ever any incentive, period. Like there's no reason to ever kill a character in a story ever. Because if the reasoning is like, well, there's no emotional difference between a character actually dying and a character just thinking they're going to die, then why would you ever actually kill a character? Why wouldn't you just bring back every character, right? What's the difference? Like, bring back Hero Look. He thought he was going to die. You still get the emotional feels in the moment of thinking he's going to die. What's the difference, right? Like, by that logic, do you feel like Pell's scene is just as sad as if Pell actually died? You know, do you feel like when you're reading that Alabasta Pell scene, do you feel just as sad reading that as if you were reading it and as it turns out Pell survives? To me, I think that there is a fundamental difference. I think that's why people are upset about Pell. I think that there's a difference between just making the reader and the character temporarily think that they're going to die and actually going through with the finality of death, because that is the power of death. Death is permanence. It's the one permanent thing in our, like, that's why it's so powerful in fiction, because death is the idea of the end in real life, right? So transposing that into fiction is very, very powerful as a tool. I don't think it's something that should be used lightly. That's my personal feeling. I think that's the same reason that, like, you know, most other great writers treat death with the, the weight, the sensitivity that it deserves in storytelling, and they don't just try and write death scenes that turn out to be false later on, because there is a fundamental difference, in my opinion. All right, guys. Probably read one more question and then call it a day. The question says, Zoro's the strat with the most focus in Wano after Luffy. I agree, but it's like, there's definitely a difference between, how do I say? Like, in every arc, there's going to be a Straw Hat that has the most focus after Luffy. There's a difference between, like, you know, I think in, like Whole Cake Island, you would say that that's an arc where, like, Sanji was really, really pivotal to the story, right? Like, you could argue that he had just about the same amount of focus as Luffy, right? Versus something like, I'd say like Skypiea, which is an arc where Nami was the Straw Hat that got the most focus after Luffy, but I wouldn't say that it was like a Nami-centric arc. I think that's how I view Zoro and Wano, where he did have the most focus out of any Straw Hat after Luffy, but not in a way that I felt that he was ever like the secondary protagonist of the arc, if that makes sense. And I think a lot of readers were hoping that Zoro would take up that role, similar to Sanji and Whole Cake, very possibly like we might get with Usopp and Elbaf, you know? Ali Clown says, I'm sorry, but some of these explanations you're giving are ridiculous in the sense that you shouldn't have to give them. I agree, but, you know, it is what it is. I also understand that people feel like I can't change how people feel. Like if people feel exactly the same with Kuma's, like the same emotions you felt reading Kuma's scenario the first time, it doesn't change if Kuma gets his consciousness back and lives a happy life with Bonnie. If it doesn't change, I can't say that you should not feel that way, right? I understand a lot of people feel just as sad with the Saul scene, even knowing that he's alive or not alive. To me, that's just not how my brain works. I can't change how you feel that. I think I would argue that in the broader fictional sense, there are certain things that other authors just don't do because there are certain principles that most would agree make sense, but you know, it is what it is. All right, guys. All right. I think we're probably going to call it here. And yeah, this was a good stream. I like midday streams because I get more energy. I don't know if this is what it's going to be the regular schedule going forward, so I guess we will wait and see.